Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the gaslit bedroom of Victorian England, where the clock strikes midnight and you find yourself wide awake, staring at ornate ceiling mouldings, while the rest of your household slumbers peacefully. Your mind races with the day's concerns, the factory smoke you inhaled, the corset that compressed your organs for 12 hours, the telegram that arrived with disturbing news from the colonies. Sleep, that most natural of human functions, has become your nightly enemy. The story may solve mysteries you never had an explanation for, about why we obsess over sleep routines even today. So, before you explore the story with me, please take a moment to help me subscribe to the channel, like and share this video, or maybe leave a comment below, but make sure you do it when you really like what I bring to you. I'd love to hear where and when you started watching this video, or perhaps what your own bedtime struggles feel like. Maybe you're listening from halfway across the world, fighting your own battle with insomnia. Or maybe you're just curious about the bizarre things our ancestors tried in their quest for rest. Now, let's keep the lights as soft as possible. Turn on the fan for a gentle sound to help the story feel more emotional, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You're living in an era of unprecedented change. The Industrial Revolution has transformed your world from agrarian rhythms to mechanical time. Factories operate around the clock, their chimneys belching smoke that turns London's sky a perpetual grey. Gas lamps illuminate streets at night, confusing your body's ancient relationship with darkness. Train whistles pierce the evening air at irregular intervals. Your great-grandparents rose with the sun and retired when darkness fell. But you exist in a new reality where time itself has been commodified, measured, and sold. The Victorian sleep crisis isn't just in your imagination. Medical journals of the 1880s overflow with reports of epidemic insomnia. Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell, a prominent Philadelphia neurologist, estimates that nearly 40% of urban-dwelling adults suffer from what he terms nervous exhaustion with accompanying sleep disruption. You read these statistics in the morning papers, finding strange comfort in knowing you're not alone in your nocturnal struggles. But here's where it gets interesting and slightly absurd. The same era that prides itself on scientific progress and rational thinking approaches the sleep problem with a peculiar mix of legitimate medical inquiry and outright quackery. You find yourself caught between genuinely innovative research and solutions that would make modern doctors weep into their prescription pads. Historians still argue whether the Victorian sleep epidemic was primarily physiological or psychological in origin. Some scholars point to genuine environmental factors: air pollution, dietary changes, the stress of rapid urbanization. Others suggest it was partly a fashionable affliction, a mark of sensitivity and refinement to suffer from delicate nerves and troubled sleep. After all, robust sleep is for peasants and labourers. Sophisticated ladies and gentlemen are too refined, too intellectually active, too burdened with the weight of empire to simply doze off. You attend dinner parties where the conversation inevitably turns to sleep remedies. Lady Pemberton swears by her German sleeping draught, though she won't reveal its ingredients. Mr. Blackwood has invested in a patented oscillating bed frame. Your own physician, Dr. Harrington, suggests everything from cold baths to electric treatments, seeming to contradict himself from one visit to the next. The market responds with enthusiasm that borders on mania. Shop windows display a bewildering array of sleep aids bottles promising instant repose, devices that look like torture instruments, pillows stuffed with exotic materials, headgear that wouldn't look out of place in a Jules Verne novel. You walk down Oxford Street and count 17 different establishments advertising solutions to sleeplessness within a single block. What's particularly fascinating is how the Victorians pathologized sleep itself. Previous generations simply slept when tired and woke when rested, but you live in an age that's invented sleep hygiene. Nervous insomnia, cerebral hyperemia during recumbence, and a dozen other medicalised terms for the simple act of not sleeping. Your grandmother never worried about her sleep efficiency or optimal REM cycles, but you've been taught to analyse, measure, and fret over every aspect of your nightly rest. The irony, of course, is that this obsessive attention to sleep probably makes the problem worse. You lie awake wondering why you can't sleep, which prevents you from sleeping, which gives you more reason to wonder. It's a Victorian catch-22. Though you won't encounter that particular phrase for another 70 years, some of the era's sleep researchers are genuinely ahead of their time. Dr. Marida Manasine conducts experiments on sleep deprivation that reveal important truths about the necessity of rest for survival. Other investigators document the stages of sleep, the relationship between temperature and drowsiness, the impact of digestion on sleep quality. These researchers lay groundwork that will eventually lead to legitimate sleep medicine. But for every serious scientist, there are 10 enterprising charlatans ready to exploit your desperation. They promise miracle cures, instant solutions, scientific breakthroughs that are nothing more than repackaged folk remedies or outright dangerous substances. You, exhausted and willing to try anything, become the perfect customer. As you lie in your bed tonight, or rather, this Victorian night we're exploring together, you represent a curious moment in human history. You're caught between ancient sleep patterns disrupted by modernity and the scientific understanding that might actually help you. You're a guinea pig in humanity's great sleep experiment, testing remedies that range from the sublime to the ridiculous. And the truly peculiar part, many of the solutions you're about to try will seem utterly bizarre to your great-great-grandchildren, yet they'll be struggling with their own versions of the same problem, buying their own peculiar gadgets and potions, convinced that this time, finally, science has cracked the code of perfect sleep. You stand in the dimly lit apothecary, breathing in the mingled scents of camphor, lavender, and something vaguely chemical that makes your nose twitch. Behind the mahogany counter, glass bottles gleam in neat rows, each promising the sleep that's eluded you for weeks. The pharmacist, Mr. Pemberton, no relation to Lady Pemberton from last night's dinner party, adjusts his spectacles and asks about your symptoms with the grave concern of a priest taking confession. Difficulty initiating sleep or maintaining it, he inquires, already reaching for different bottles depending on your answer. You explain the whole miserable routine, the tossing, the turning, the watching shadows shift across the ceiling as hours crawl past. He nods sagely, having heard this litany 100 times before, and begins assembling your personalised sleep remedy. The first bottle he selects contains Godfrey's Cordial, a syrupy concoction that's been popular since your grandmother's time. The label promises peaceful repose for troubled nerves, but what it doesn't advertise quite so prominently is the generous amount of opium mixed with treacle and spices. You've heard whispers about this one, how Mrs. Patterson down the lane developed quite a dependency on it, how some mothers give it to crying babies with alarming frequency. But Mr. Pemberton assures you that, taken in moderation, it's perfectly safe. Just a spoonful before bed, he says, as if recommending a pleasant nightcap. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors fully understood the addictive properties of opium-based medications, or willfully ignored them in pursuit of effective treatments. The evidence suggests a troubling combination of both. They knew enough to be cautious, but not enough to be alarmed. Or perhaps they were simply more afraid of sleeplessness than addiction. Next, he produces a bottle of chlorodyne, a proprietary mixture containing chloroform, morphine, and cannabis tincture. The inventor, Dr. John Collis Brown, markets it as a cure for everything from insomnia to cholera to the vapours. You've seen the advertisements in the Times, featuring testimonials from military officers and colonial administrators who credit the stuff with saving their lives during tropical fevers. For sleep purposes, Mr. Pemberton suggests mixing it with warm milk, creating what he calls a soporific nightcap of the highest order. The Victorian patent medicine industry is a wild frontier of pharmacological experimentation, where the line between medicine and poison is alarmingly thin. You're essentially playing Russian roulette with your neurochemistry, though you won't know that term for decades yet. But wait, there's more, and this is where things get truly strange. Mr. Pemberton shows you a new arrival from America Doctor, Hammond's Nerve and Brain Pills, which contain a special ingredient called bromide. The label depicts a serene woman sleeping beneath a starry sky, her face the picture of peaceful repose. What the label doesn't mention is that bromides accumulate in your system over time, potentially causing a condition called bromism that involves hallucinations, psychosis, and a distinctive skin rash. The Victorian medical community won't fully understand this for another couple of decades, by which time thousands will have experienced these delightful side effects. You eye a particularly ornate bottle containing something called radium water. Yes, actual radioactive radium dissolved in distilled water, sold as a health tonic that supposedly energizes you during the day and relaxes you at night by harmonizing your atomic vibrations. The radium ore revogator is particularly popular, a ceramic crock lined with radium that you fill with water overnight, creating a mildly radioactive beverage to enjoy first thing in the morning. The slogan promises it will make you sleep like the dead, which, in retrospect, is horrifyingly accurate. Of course, nobody in 1890 understands that radioactivity isn't the health miracle they think it is, that glow-in-the-dark appeal will quite literally kill people, most famously the radium girls of the 1920s, but for now, you're encouraged to drink up and enjoy the tingles, Mr. Pemberton also stocks more benign options, though they're equally dubious in effectiveness. There's soothing syrup containing nothing more harmful than sugar, alcohol, and chamomile, essentially an expensive way to get slightly drunk on floral-flavoured hooch. Dr. Batty's asthma cigarettes, which you're meant to smoke before bed, contain stramonium leaves that are supposedly calming but actually contain tryptophan alkaloids that can cause confusion and rapid heartbeat. Nothing says good night's sleep like accelerated pulse and mild delirium. Right, the lettuce opium preparation catches your eye next. This one's actually based on a real phenomenon, lactucarium. The milky sap from wild lettuce does contain mild sedative compounds. The Victorians, in their enthusiasm, have concentrated it into a thick paste that you dissolve in brandy before bed. It won't hurt you, but it probably won't do much good either, which makes it one of the safer options on offer. Then there's the magnetic elixir, which contains iron filings suspended in a sweet syrup. The theory goes that consuming magnetic material will align your body's natural magnetic field, promoting restful sleep. The reality is that you're basically drinking rust-flavoured sugar water, but the placebo effect is surprisingly strong. Mr. Pemberton mentions that several of his most refined customers swear by it, which tells you more about the power of suggestion than magnetism. Some remedies border on the poetic in their absurdity. The essence of violet sleep tonic contains extract of violet leaves, lovely and harmless, but utterly useless for sleep. The Morpheus Moonbeam drops are essentially just valerian root tincture dyed silver, because apparently sleep medicine needs to look mystical to work. You're paying premium prices for theatre as much as therapy. But here's a quirky historical tidbit: some Victorian sleep medications accidentally got it right. Valerian root, which appears in many preparations, actually does have mild sedative properties that modern science has confirmed, same with hops extract, passion flower, and even chamomile. The Victorians stumbled upon effective herbal remedies, then buried them under layers of opium, alcohol, and radioactive nonsense. Mr. Pemberton notices your hesitation and produces his piece de resistance Vin Mariani, a French import containing coca leaves macerated in Bordeaux wine. Pope Leo XIII reportedly carries a flask of the stuff, which is quite the endorsement. It's marketed for everything including sleep troubles, despite the fact that it contains cocaine not exactly known for its soporific qualities. The Victorian logic seems to be that if it's exotic and expensive, it must work for everything. You leave the apothecary with a basket of bottles, having spent nearly a week's wages on chemical sleep aids. Each one promises the rest you desperately crave. And you've got enough opium, morphine, cocaine, and radioactive water to stock a small pharmacy. The pharmacist's parting advice: try them all and see what works best for your particular constitution. Personalised medicine. Victorian style. That night, you stand before your collection of bottles like a general surveying troops before battle. Which chemical ally will you choose in your war against wakefulness? Do you remember the simple days when people just went to sleep? Your great-grandmother would laugh at this pharmaceutical arsenal, but then again, she never had to sleep through the sound of steam engines and gasworks running all night. You reach for the Godfrey's cordial, measuring out a spoonful of sweet, opium-laced syrup as it slides down your throat. You wonder if this is progress or madness. Probably both. You wake the next morning with a cottony mouth and a vague sense that the Godfrey's cordial worked a bit too well. You're groggy, stumbling, and can't quite remember if last night's vivid dreams were pleasant or disturbing. But your neighbour, Mrs. Ashworth, has a different solution entirely. One that doesn't involve swallowing mysterious liquids. She's invited you to her parlour to witness what she calls the future of scientific sleep therapy. And you arrive to find her room transformed into what looks like a magnetism exhibition. Horseshoe magnets dangle from the ceiling on silk cords. A peculiar iron bed frame dominates the centre of the room, with magnets embedded in the headboard and footboard. Mrs. Ashworth herself wears a magnetic corset. Yes, that's a real thing which she claims aligns her spine and promotes restful sleep through the harmonious redistribution of bodily magnetism. She's practically vibrating with enthusiasm, though whether that's the magnets or just her personality is unclear. You see, she explains, gesturing dramatically at her magnetic bedroom. The human body is essentially an electromagnetic system. Doctor, Mesmer discovered this nearly a century ago, and now we're finally applying his principles to the sleep crisis. She says this with the confidence of someone who's never actually read Mesmer's debunked theories, but has absolute faith in the advertisements she's encountered. The magnetic sleep movement is based on a fascinating misunderstanding of how both magnetism and the human body work. Franz Anton Mesmer, that late 18th century Austrian physician, proposed that an invisible natural force called animal magnetism flowed through all living things, and that illness resulted from imbalances in this magnetic fluid. While Mesmer's theories were largely dismissed by the scientific community, Benjamin Franklin himself participated in a commission that debunked them. The ideas never quite died. They evolved, adapted, and by your Victorian era, they've been repackaged as a cure for insomnia. Mrs. Ashworth demonstrates her magnetic sleeping cap, a leather helmet studded with small magnets positioned to target specific points on the skull. The magnets draw out the excessive mental energy that keeps you awake, she explains. Placing it on your head, it's heavy, uncomfortable, and the magnets create odd pressure points that are anything but relaxing. You feel like you're wearing a medieval torture device disguised as medical equipment, which isn't far from the truth. Historians still argue whether Victorian magnetic therapy practitioners were genuine believers in their pseudoscience, or knowing fraudsters exploiting desperate insomniacs. The evidence suggests a spectrum. Some were true believers who'd convinced themselves that magnets cured everything. while others were shrewd business people who'd identified a profitable market and supplied the demand. The magnetic bed itself is an impressive piece of furniture, you'll admit. The frame contains lodestones, naturally magnetic rocks, arranged in patterns supposedly corresponding to the body's magnetic meridians. You're instructed to sleep with your head pointing north, aligning yourself with Earth's magnetic field. The mattress has iron springs configured in a specific pattern meant to create a soporific magnetic envelope. It probably cost Mrs. Ashworth a small fortune, and it definitely does nothing except provide a conversation piece for her equally credulous friends. But here's where the Victorian magnetic obsession gets truly creative magnetic jewellery, specifically designed for sleep. You examine Mrs. Ashworth's collection: magnetic bracelets, magnetic anklets, magnetic rings, even magnetic earrings. Each piece is supposedly calibrated to affect different aspects of sleep. The bracelets prevent night sweats. The anklets stop restless leg syndrome before anyone's even named the condition. And the earrings, well, they're meant to prevent nightmares by stabilizing the magnetic field around your dream-processing brain regions. Is nonsense layered upon nonsense, but it's expensive. Fashionable nonsense. Mrs. Ashworth produces a catalogue from the London Magnetic Therapy Institute, and you flip through pages of increasingly absurd products. There's the magnetic sleeping sack, a full-body garment lined with iron filings that makes you look like a metallic cocoon. The polar magnetic pillow, filled with magnetite powder, promises to draw sleep toward your head through irresistible magnetic attraction, as if sleep were iron filings that could be pulled toward a magnet. There's even a magnetic pet bed for your dog or cat, because apparently animals suffer from Victorian insomnia too. The theoretical basis for all this becomes more elaborate the deeper you dig. Some practitioners claim that Earth's magnetic field has weakened since the medieval period, requiring artificial supplementation for proper sleep. Others insist that urban living disrupts your personal magnetic field through proximity to iron machinery and metal structures. The cure always involves buying more magnetic products, conveniently available from the same people diagnosing your magnetic deficiency. One particularly enterprising inventor has created the magnetic sleep chamber, essentially a canopy bed with magnetic curtains that create a magnetically isolated sleep environment. You'd be sleeping inside what amounts to a very expensive tent festooned with magnets, protected from the disruptive magnetic emanations of modern civilization. The fact that magnets don't actually work this way hasn't dampened enthusiasm one bit. Mrs. Ashworth swears by her magnetic routine. Every evening she dons her magnetic nightgown, yes, they've magnetized clothing too, positions herself in the magnetic bed, places the magnetic cap on her head, and lies perfectly still in north-south alignment for optimal magnetic flow. She claims to sleep like a baby, though you suspect the elaborate ritual itself might be more soporific than any actual magnetic influence. There's something to be said for routine and expectation in promoting sleep, even if the science is complete hogwash. Here's a quirky detail that'll make you smile. Some Victorian magnetic sleep enthusiasts become so convinced of their treatment's efficacy that they report being able to feel the magnetic currents flowing through their bodies. They describe tingling sensations, waves of relaxation, even visualize the magnetic energy as coloured light flowing along their limbs. It's a beautiful example of the mind's ability to create experiences that match expectations. Proof that placebo effects were alive and well in the gaslit age. The medical establishment of the time is split on magnetic therapy. Conservative physicians dismiss it as quackery, pointing out that static magnets can't significantly affect human tissue. Progressive doctors, however, are intrigued by electromagnetism. This is the era when electricity itself seems magical and mysterious, and wonder if there might be something to it. A few conduct actual experiments, applying magnets to insomniacs in controlled settings, though they rarely publish results because, surprise, magnets don't cure insomnia. What's particularly amusing is how magnetic therapy competes with other Victorian sleep cures. Proponents of electric treatments claim magnets are obsolete, that only electrical current can properly stimulate the nervous system. Advocates of chemical solutions scoff at physical devices entirely. Magnetic enthusiasts insist their approach is more natural, safer, and scientifically grounded than either alternative. Everyone's selling something, and you're caught in the crossfire of competing pseudosciences as you leave Mrs. Ashworth's magnetic paradise. She presses a small magnetized disc into your palm. "Sleep with this under your pillow," she instructs. You'll notice the difference immediately. You thank her, pocketing the disc, which is probably just a painted piece of metal that couldn't attract a paperclip, much less cure insomnia. That night, you dutifully place the magnetic disc beneath your pillow, more out of politeness than conviction. As you drift off, perhaps aided by exhaustion rather than magnetism, you wonder what future generations will make of this magnetic madness. Will they laugh at your gullibility? Feel superior in their scientific advancement? Or will they have their own equivalent absurdities? Convinced they finally solved the sleep problem with whatever passes for cutting-edge technology in their era, the magnet sits silent beneath your pillow, doing absolutely nothing except existing. Which, ironically, is exactly what you need from a sleep aid, something that doesn't poison you, shock you, or require a complicated ritual. Sometimes the best medicine is the one that simply lets you be. You're barely recovered from yesterday's magnetic misadventure when you receive an invitation to Mr. Thornbury's townhouse for what he mysteriously describes as a demonstration of locomotor somnambulism inducement. This sounds either brilliantly scientific or completely deranged, which makes it perfectly Victorian. You arrive to find his bedroom has been transformed into something resembling a bizarre mechanical nursery for adults. The centrepiece is what Thornbury proudly calls his Somniambulator Mark III, a full-size bed mounted on an elaborate system of springs, gears, and pneumatic pistons. The contraption rocks, sways, oscillates, and performs what he describes as a symphony of soporific motions designed to replicate the gentle movements experienced in utero. You're not entirely sure how he knows what the womb feels like, but he's committed to the concept with an engineer's precision and a madman's budget. The principle is elementary, he explains, cranking the handle that sets the bed into gentle motion. Infants fall asleep when rocked. We never outgrow this fundamental need, we simply forget it exists. This device reminds the adult body of its infantile requirement for motion-induced rest. The bed begins swaying in a lazy figure-eight pattern, and you'll admit, watching it is oddly mesmerizing. The Victorian obsession with mechanical cradles for adults stems from a surprisingly reasonable observation. Rhythmic motion does seem to promote sleep. Sailors report sleeping well at sea despite uncomfortable conditions. Mothers know that rocking a baby works wonders, and even adults often rock themselves unconsciously when trying to fall asleep. Where the Victorians go wrong, or at least get entertainingly excessive, is in their mechanisation of this natural impulse. Mr. Thornbury's device is far from the only one on the market. You've seen advertisements for the psycho-motor rest inducer, which combines rocking with what it calls graduated oscillatory deceleration, essentially. It starts rocking fast and gradually slows down, supposedly training your brain to follow the descending rhythm into sleep. There's the pendulum bed, suspended from the ceiling on chains, which swings like a massive pocket watch, and the rotary sleeper, which slowly revolves a full 360 degrees over the course of an hour, ensuring you never sleep in the same position for long. Historians still argue whether these devices actually helped anyone sleep, or simply provided such uncomfortable experiences that users eventually passed out from exhaustion. The few surviving testimonials are suspiciously similar to the manufacturer's advertising copy, suggesting they might have been fabricated entirely. Mr. Thornbury demonstrates the various settings on his somniambulator. There's gentle wave, mimicking the motion of a boat on calm seas, nursery rock, replicating a traditional rocking chair's movement, metropolitan hansom, which somehow reproduces the jostling of a horse-drawn carriage on cobblestones, because nothing says restful sleep like simulating a bumpy ride through London's streets. And his personal favourite, railway sleeper, which creates the rhythmic clickety-clack sensation of train travel. He's essentially built a bed that tries to convince you you're somewhere else entirely. The engineering is actually quite impressive. You'll admit, the device uses a clockwork mechanism wound by hand each evening, with enough stored energy to maintain motion for up to 6 hours. Adjustable weights allow you to customize the amplitude and frequency of the rocking. There's even a safety brake in case the motion becomes too vigorous. Though you're not sure what kind of catastrophic failure would cause a bed to start thrashing violently enough to require emergency stopping. "Would you like to try it, mister?" Thornbury asks with the enthusiasm of a child showing off a new toy. You're hesitant. The contraption looks like it could either lull you to sleep or launch you across the room, but curiosity wins. You climb aboard, lie back, and mister. Thornbury engages the mechanism. The first sensation is actually rather pleasant. The bed begins a slow, gentle rocking that reminds you of being in a hammock on a summer afternoon. Your body sways with the motion, and you can feel your muscles beginning to relax. For a moment, you think Mr. Thornbury might actually be onto something. Then the gear system lets out a metallic groan. The rhythm becomes slightly erratic, and you're suddenly aware that you're lying on an unstable platform controlled by Victorian-era machinery. Relaxation gives way to vigilance as you wonder if you're about to become a cautionary tale about sleeping in experimental devices. Here's a quirky historical detail: some mechanical bed manufacturers claimed their devices could be calibrated to match the sleeper's heartbeat, creating a sympathetic resonance that supposedly entrained your cardiovascular system into a restful state. The science behind this was completely fabricated, but it sounds impressive in advertisements. A few high-end models even included stethoscope attachments so you could measure your pulse and adjust the mechanism accordingly, turning bedtime into a medical procedure. The market for adult cradles spawned some truly creative variations. There's the hammock bed, which is exactly what it sounds like, a hammock mounted on a frame with a motor to maintain constant swaying. The circular bed rotates horizontally, like a very slow merry-go-round, based on the theory that changing your orientation relative to Earth's magnetic field promotes deeper sleep. You're starting to notice that Victorian sleep solutions often involve unnecessary rotation. One inventor patented the dual-motion sleeper, which rocks both side to side and head to foot simultaneously, creating what he called three-dimensional soporific stimulation. Users reported feeling seasick rather than sleepy, but the inventor insisted they simply needed time to adjust to the complex motion. The device was quietly discontinued after several reports of people falling out and injuring themselves. Mr. Thornbury shows you his collection of catalogues from various manufacturers. And the marketing language is wonderfully absurd. One company promises their bed will resurrect the Edenic tranquility of prenatal existence. Another claims to have solved the riddle of Morpheus through the application of Newtonian principles to the problem of rest. There's a lot of scientific-sounding language wrapped around what is essentially a fancy rocking chair you lie down in. The pneumatic models are particularly fascinating. They use compressed air to create gentle lifting and lowering motions, supposedly mimicking the rise and fall of a mother's breathing. You have to manually pump air into a reservoir each evening, which is quite a workout. Ironic for a device meant to promote relaxation. The hissing of the pneumatic system as air releases creates a rhythmic sound that's either soothing or deeply annoying depending on your tolerance for mechanical noises. Some versions incorporate music boxes that play lullabies in sync with the rocking motion, creating a multisensory sleep experience. Others include warming elements, hot water bottles built into the mattress based on the theory that gentle warmth combined with motion creates irresistible drowsiness. The most elaborate models offer all of these features plus aromatherapy diffusers, creating what amounts to a one-bed sleep laboratory. The social implications are rather amusing. Owning a mechanical bed becomes a status symbol among the wealthy, a way to demonstrate that you're so refined, so sensitive, so thoroughly modern that you require mechanical assistance to achieve something animals do naturally. Dinner party conversations include comparing bed specifications, debating the merits of different motion patterns, and discussing which craftsman builds the finest oscillating sleep apparatus. As you climb off Mr. Thornbury's somniambulator, slightly dizzy and no sleepier than before, he's already describing his plans for the Mark IV model. It will include variable motion patterns, musical accompaniment, and possibly a mechanical arm to tuck you in. You nod politely while backing toward the door, wondering if simplicity has become so unfashionable that nobody considers just lying still anymore. That night, in your stationary bed, you appreciate its stability with new gratitude. No gears, no springs, no pistons, just a solid frame and a mattress that doesn't move unless you do. Sometimes progress means recognizing that not everything needs to be mechanized, automated, or improved upon. Your bed doesn't rock, sway, or rotate, and that's suddenly the most luxurious feature you can imagine. Do you remember when beds were just beds? The Morning Post brings a printed invitation embossed with golden lightning bolts, which should have been your first warning. Dr. Cornelius Blackwood, electrotherapeutic physician and pioneer of galvanic somnology, invites you to experience what he calls the electrifying future of sleep science. You're beginning to suspect that Victorian sleep cure demonstrations are becoming your unexpected social calendar, but curiosity and persistent insomnia draws you to his consulting rooms on Harley Street. Doctor. Blackwood's office resembles a cross between a medical clinic and an electrical exhibition. Glass tubes filled with colourful gases glow on shelves. Copper wires snake across the ceiling, and the air carries the distinctive ozone smell of electrical discharge. In the centre of the room sits what looks like a leather armchair that mated with a lightning conductor and produced unholy offspring. This doctor, Blackwood announces with theatrical flair, is his Morphean electric crown a helmet designed to deliver carefully calibrated electrical currents directly to your sleep centres. Electricity, he intones, adjusting various dials and switches, is the very essence of neural function. Every thought, every dream, every descent into slumber involves electrical impulses dancing through the brain. Why not harness this power? Why not use electricity to encourage the brain toward rest? It's a compelling argument if you ignore the part where nobody actually understands how the brain works, and applying random electrical current seems, at best, optimistic. The helmet itself is a masterpiece of intimidating design. Leather and brass construction supports a network of copper electrodes positioned to contact various points on your scalp. Wires connect to an impressive-looking box covered in gauges, knobs, and a large hand crank that doctor, Blackwood assures you, regulates the somnambulistic frequency with scientific precision. You're fairly certain that somnambulistic frequency is a term he invented, but he says it with such confidence that questioning seems rude. Victorian electrotherapy for insomnia emerges from legitimate scientific discoveries about electricity's role in nerve function, then careens wildly into speculation and wishful thinking. Luigi Galvani's experiments with frog legs in the 1780s proved that electricity could trigger muscle movement. Michael Faraday's electromagnetic induction discoveries in the 1830s suggested mysterious connections between electrical and magnetic forces. By your era, electricity has become a cure-all for everything from melancholy to baldness, with sleep disorders firmly in the crosshairs. Historians still argue whether early electrical sleep devices caused more harm than good, with some evidence suggesting they produced everything from headaches to minor burns, while occasionally stumbling upon effects we'd now recognise as primitive transcranial stimulation. Dr. Blackwood demonstrates on himself first, placing the helmet on his head and slowly turning the crank. The gauges flicker, showing what he claims is direct current optimised for theta wave induction. He describes a tingling sensation, a pleasant warmth spreading across his scalp, a gentle pulling feeling as if sleep itself were being drawn toward him by electromagnetic attraction. His serene expression is either genuine relaxation or the result of frying some brain cells. And you're not qualified to determine which. Your turn, he announces, removing the helmet and gesturing toward the chair. You hesitate reasonably. You think, but he's already adjusting the settings for what he calls your constitutional requirements, which he's determined by examining your tongue and feeling your pulse. This is Victorian medicine in a nutshell, impressive-looking equipment combined with diagnostic methods that predate the Roman Empire. You settle into the chair, and the helmet descends onto your head like a crown of questionable judgment. The interior smells of leather, metal, and previous subject's nervous perspiration. Doctor. Blackwood begins his electrical ministrations, and you immediately feel something. There's definitely a tingling sensation, though whether it's therapeutic or your nerves screaming in protest is debatable. Your scalp prickles as if tiny insects were marching across it. Behind your eyes, you perceive odd flashes of light phosphenes, caused by electrical stimulation of the optic nerves. Though Dr. Blackwood interprets them as visual manifestations of approaching slumber. The current increases slightly, and the tingling becomes more pronounced. Your jaw clenches involuntarily. Your fingers twitch. This is either cutting-edge sleep therapy or a low-grade electrocution, and the line between them feels disturbingly thin. Doctor. Blackwood monitors his gauges with the focused attention of an artist perfecting his masterpiece, occasionally murmuring things like excellent theta engagement and superior parasympathetic response, which you suspect he's making up on the spot. Here's where it gets genuinely bizarre. Some Victorian electrical sleep helmets incorporated additional features beyond simple current delivery. Doctor. Blackwood's model includes small magnets because apparently one pseudoscience isn't enough positioned to focus the electrical flow along optimal pathways. Other versions used coloured light bulbs inside the helmet, flashing in patterns meant to hypnotise the wearer into drowsiness. The most elaborate designs pumped aromatic vapours through tubes built into the helmet, combining electrical, magnetic, visual, and olfactory stimulation into one overwhelming sensory assault. The market for electrical sleep devices exploded in the 1880s and 1890s, with dozens of competing designs. There's the galvanic nightcap, a simpler version consisting of metal mesh sewn into a sleeping cap, connected to a battery worn on your belt, the electrosoporific vest, which applies current to your torso rather than your head, based on some vague theory about sedating the nervous system through the solar plexus, and the truly ambitious full-body electrical sleep suit, which makes you look like a Victorian astronaut while supposedly bathing every nerve in soporific currents. One inventor created the conjugal electric sleeping apparatus, designed for couples to share electrical therapy simultaneously. Two helmets connected to the same power source, supposedly synchronizing the user's brainwaves and promoting harmonious rest. The advertising promised that couples using the device would not only sleep better, but achieve unprecedented marital sympathy and understanding. You're skeptical that shared electrocution builds relationship intimacy, but the Victorians are willing to try anything. Doctor, Blackwood finally reduces the current and removes your helmet. Your hair stands at odd angles, likely from static electricity, and you feel slightly disoriented, as if you've just stepped off a merry-go-round. He declares the session a complete success, citing your evident neural recalibration and optimized cerebral electrical potential. You're not sure you feel particularly recalibrated, but you're definitely experiencing something, whether it's therapeutic benefit or mild electrical shock symptoms. Only time will tell. The theoretical basis for electrical sleep therapy becomes more elaborate with each practitioner. Some claim that insomnia results from electrical deficiency in the brain, requiring supplementation like a discharged battery. Others insist the problem is electrical chaos or discord, with proper current application restoring orderly neural function. A few propose that sleep itself is essentially an electrical phenomenon, and that external electricity can trigger it like starting an engine. The theories contradict each other, but that doesn't stop everyone from claiming scientific authority. Safety concerns are, shall we say, inconsistently addressed. Doctor. Blackwood assures you his device is perfectly safe when operated by trained professionals, which is reassuring until you realise he's the only person who knows how to operate it, and his training consists of whatever he taught himself while developing it. Other practitioners offer minimal instruction and sell take-home devices, leading to predictable mishaps when people apply too much current or attach electrodes incorrectly. Here's a delightful quirky detail. Some electrical sleep helmets included built-in timers that would automatically shut off after a set duration, preventing users from receiving prolonged exposure while unconscious. The problem? The timers were often unreliable clockwork mechanisms that might cut power after 5 minutes or keep running for 5 hours. Users reported waking with headaches, confusion, and occasionally small burns where electrodes contacted their scalps. The manufacturer's response was typically to blame improper usage rather than acknowledge design flaws. As you leave Dr. Blackwood's office, still feeling slightly tingly, he presents you with a pamphlet describing his at-home electrical sleep system. It's smaller, simpler, and supposedly foolproof, though you've learned that foolproof in Victorian medical devices is more aspiration than reality. The pamphlet includes testimonials from satisfied customers who claim the device changed their lives. Though you notice the testimonials lack surnames or any verifiable details, that evening, you contemplate the electrical sleep helmet with a mixture of fascination and horror. The Victorians have taken a legitimate scientific discovery, electricity's role in neural function, and weaponized it against insomnia with more enthusiasm than understanding. You're essentially volunteering to have your brain zapped in hopes it'll surrender to sleep, which is either brave or foolish. You decide to stick with your magnetic disc and opium cordial for now. At least those only pose risks of doing nothing and addiction respectively. Adding electrocution to your bedtime routine seems like tempting fate, even by Victorian standards. Some progress you're learning is best admired from at a safe distance. The following week, your friend Miss Weatherby insists you accompany her to what she describes only as an evening establishment of the most remarkable character. Given your recent adventures in Victorian sleep therapy, you're understandably cautious, but Miss Weatherby has a persuasive enthusiasm that's difficult to refuse. You find yourself standing before an unmarked door on a fashionable street, where a discreet brass plaque reads, Professor Armitage's Institute of Mesmeric Repose. You step inside to discover a world of calculated tranquility. Heavy velvet curtains block all outside light and sound. The air is thick with incense sandalwood. You think, mixed with something vaguely medicinal. Soft gaslight filters through coloured glass shades, bathing everything in a dreamlike amber glow. A receptionist speaks in hushed tones, as if normal volume might shatter the atmosphere of deliberate calm. This isn't a medical office, it's a theatre of sleep, and you're about to become part of the performance. Professor Armitage emerges from behind purple drapery like a stage magician, which isn't far from the truth. He's dressed entirely in black, with intense eyes that seem to look through you rather than at you. His voice is carefully modulated, each word dropping like a stone into still water. "Welcome," he intones, "to the realm where conscious will surrenders to the ancient art of mesmerism. Here, we do not fight sleep, we seduce it." The hypnotic sleep parlour represents one of the more controversial Victorian approaches to insomnia, blending Franz Mesmer's discredited theories with legitimate hypnotic techniques that won't be properly understood for decades. You're in a space where showmanship and therapy intertwine so completely that separating them is impossible. Professor Armitage is part doctor, part performer, and entirely convinced of his own mysterious powers. He guides you to a reclining chair positioned before a large mirror. Candles flank the mirror, their flames reflecting infinitely in its surface. "Focus on the candles," he instructs. "Let your gaze soften. Notice how the flames seem to dance, to merge, to multiply." His voice develops a rhythmic quality, rising and falling like gentle waves. You're becoming aware of your breathing. Each breath draws you deeper into relaxation. Each exhalation releases the tensions that keep sleep at bay. Historians still argue whether Victorian mesmerists and hypnotists were cynical frauds or genuine pioneers of psychological techniques that work despite their practitioners' flawed understanding of the mechanisms involved. The technique Professor Armitage employs is classic animal magnetism mixed with what will eventually be recognised as hypnotic induction. He makes sweeping gestures with his hands, supposedly directing magnetic currents from his body into yours. He describes these currents in vivid detail: warm, flowing, irresistible, until you almost believe you can feel them. The power of suggestion is extraordinary. Your limbs actually do feel heavier. Your eyelids genuinely grow weighted. Though whether from mesmerism or simple exhaustion from staring at flickering candles is unclear. "Sleep," he commands softly, "is not something you achieve through effort. It is something you allow. You're learning to allow. Your body knows how to sleep, you have simply forgotten to trust it." This is actually rather sensible advice wrapped in mystical presentation. The Victorian sleep parlour stumbled onto cognitive behavioural therapy concepts decades before the field existed, though they attributed success to magnetic forces rather than psychological reconditioning. Miss Weatherby, already a devotee, reclines in an adjacent chair, her eyes closed, a serene smile playing across her lips. Professor Armitage divides his attention between you both, weaving a continuous stream of soothing suggestions. You're floating. He murmurs, "Weightless, timeless." The boundaries between waking and sleeping dissolve like sugar in warm water. The imagery is quite lovely, even if the science behind it is dubious at best. Here's where the sleep parlour experience becomes genuinely strange group sessions. On certain evenings, Professor Armitage conducts what he calls collective mesmeric sleep induction, where up to 20 people recline in rows while he orchestrates their descent into slumber like a conductor leading an orchestra. Participants report feeling connected to each other, their sleep synchronized, their dreams intermingling. Is probably just the power of shared experience and expectation, but the testimonials describe it in near religious terms. The parlour offers different packages of treatment, displayed on an ornate menu that looks like it belongs in a fine restaurant. There's the basic mesmeric induction for occasional insomniacs, the intensive magnetic sleep course for chronic sufferers, and the deluxe somnambulistic transformation program, which promises to fundamentally rewire your relationship with sleep over 12 weekly sessions. The pricing reflects the theatrical presentation. This isn't cheap medicine. It's an experience you're purchasing. Professor Armitage employs assistants he calls magnetic conductors, young women in flowing white gowns who move silently through the parlour, supposedly amplifying and directing the mesmeric forces. They place their hands near your head, your heart, your solar plexus, without actually touching, creating fields of what Armitage describes as concentrated soporific magnetism. It's choreographed beautifully, almost like a ballet of sleep induction, and you suspect the performance aspect is at least as important as any therapeutic effect. Some parlours incorporate music into their sessions. A pianist plays in an adjacent room, the notes drifting through gauze curtains, composition specifically created to induce drowsiness. The melodies avoid anything too stimulating or memorable, instead offering gentle, repetitive patterns that supposedly entrain your brainwaves into sleep-friendly frequencies. Other establishments use mechanical music boxes or even primitive phonographs, playing the same lullaby-like recordings on endless loop. The more exclusive parlours offer private rooms for individual sessions, where the mesmerist works one-on-one with particularly difficult cases. These sessions can last hours, with the practitioner employing every technique in their arsenal: magnetic passes, hypnotic suggestions, sensory manipulation, even light physical touches to guide the magnetic currents. The intimacy of these sessions raises eyebrows among the more conservative elements of Victorian society, leading to whispered scandals about what really happens behind those velvet curtains. Here's a quirky historical tidbit that'll amuse you. Some Victorian sleep parlours employed professional sleepers people who would already be sleeping when you arrived, supposedly demonstrating the effectiveness of the mesmeric environment. You'd enter to find several people in various states of peaceful repose, which were meant to inspire confidence and possibly trigger some kind of sympathetic drowsiness. Of course, the sleepers were often just staff members pretending, paid to look convincingly unconscious while newcomers settled in. The theoretical justification for mesmeric sleep therapy draws from multiple pseudoscientific wells. There's Mesmer's animal magnetism, of course, but also phrenology, the belief that skull shape reveals personality and health. Some mesmerists examine your head, feeling for sleep inhibition bumps that their techniques will supposedly smooth out. Others incorporate astrology, timing sessions according to lunar phases or planetary alignments favourable to rest. The Victorian sleep parlour is where every fashionable pseudoscience converges in service of a single goal. Professor Armitage concludes your session by bringing you gently back to full awareness. Though you're not entirely sure you ever left it, you feel relaxed, certainly, perhaps even refreshed. But whether from legitimate hypnotic technique or simply from lying quietly in a dark room for an hour is impossible to determine. He prescribes nightly self-mesmerism exercises, essentially meditation and progressive relaxation by another name, and provides a small mirror to focus on during home practice. As you and Miss Weatherby emerge into the evening air, she gushes about how transformative the sessions have been for her sleep. She's convinced Professor Armitage possesses genuine magnetic gifts, that his hands channel forces beyond normal human understanding. You're more sceptical but willing to admit the experience was pleasant, even if you suspect the ancient art is more theatre than therapy. That night, attempting Professor Armitage's self-mesmerism technique, you find yourself simply relaxing. No magnets, no electricity, no rocking mechanisms, just focused attention, controlled breathing, and permission to let go. Perhaps the sleep parlour's real secret isn't mesmerism at all, but rather the radical idea that you don't have to fight sleep, that you can approach it with calm confidence rather than desperate struggle. The mirror reflects candlelight, your breathing slows, and you drift towards sleep with unexpected ease. Whether Professor Armitage deserves credit or you've simply stumbled onto basic relaxation techniques hardly matters. Sometimes the journey toward rest requires elaborate detours through Victorian mysticism before arriving at simple truth. Do you remember the feeling of surrender, of allowing rather than forcing? Your landlady, Mrs. Pemberton, a different Pemberton from the pharmacist. Though you're beginning to suspect the entire city shares about 7 surnames, notices your persistent yawning at breakfast and clucks her tongue with the authority of someone who's solved the sleep crisis through purely domestic means. What you need, she announces, is proper bedtime nourishment. The body cannot rest on an empty stomach, nor can it sleep when overfull. It's all about dietary balance, dear. She presents you with a booklet titled Doctor, Kellogg's Guide to Soporific Nutrition. And yes, that Kellogg, the cereal magnate who has opinions about everything from cornflakes to colonics. According to this particular text, your insomnia stems entirely from eating the wrong foods at the wrong times in the wrong combinations. The solution involves a bewildering array of dietary rules that would challenge a medieval monk's devotional schedule. The Victorian obsession with dietary sleep solutions reflects a genuine understanding that digestion affects rest, taken to spectacular extremes. You're about to enter a world where midnight snacks become medical procedures, where the timing of your last bite of bread could mean the difference between restorative slumber and nocturnal torment, where entire philosophical systems have been constructed around the sleep-inducing properties of lettuce. Mrs. Pemberton's first recommendation is the somnolent supper, to be consumed exactly 3 hours before bed, not 2 hours, not 4, but precisely 3, as if sleep operates on railroad scheduling. The meal consists of foods deemed cooling to the system: boiled white fish, plain rice, steamed vegetables devoid of seasoning, and weak chamomile tea. It's aggressively bland, the kind of meal that makes you understand why Victorian cooking has such a dreadful reputation. But Mrs. Pemberton swears by it, claiming she hasn't experienced insomnia since adopting this regimen in 1883. The theoretical basis involves the ancient concept of humoral medicine, somehow surviving into the scientific age like a philosophical fossil. Hot foods, meat, spices, anything with flavour supposedly overstimulate the system, keeping you wakeful. Cold foods calm the humours, preparing the body for rest. Never mind that this theory predates germ theory and most of modern medicine. It sounds authoritative, so people embrace it. Historians still argue whether Victorian dietary sleep cures had any physiological benefit or simply worked through the placebo effect of ritual and expectation. Though modern research does confirm that certain foods affect sleep chemistry in ways the Victorians accidentally got right. But the bedtime beverage industry is where things get truly creative. Mrs. Pemberton stocks an entire cupboard of sleep-promoting drinks, each claiming unique benefits. There's hop tea, brewed from the same flowers that flavour beer, which does contain mild sedative compounds the Victorians didn't scientifically understand, but empirically discovered. There's warm milk with honey, that timeless comfort drink that actually works through tryptophan and sugars affecting neurotransmitter production. Not that anyone in 1890 could explain it that way. Then you encounter the stranger concoctions. Lettuce opium water involves steeping wild lettuce in hot water to extract its milky sap, creating a bitter tea that supposedly rivals laudanum without the addiction risk. Onion soporific syrup requires simmering sliced onions in sugar water until they release their somniferous essences, resulting in a drink that tastes exactly as unpleasant as it sounds. Bone broth nightcap, served lukewarm with a dash of nutmeg, is meant to provide sustaining nourishment without digestive burden, though it mostly provides an excuse to sip something that resembles savoury dishwater before bed. Mrs. Pemberton introduces you to her prize recipe, the Morphean posset, a medieval-derived drink she's convinced represents the pinnacle of sleep-inducing nutrition. You watch her prepare it with ceremonial precision, warm milk curdled with wine, sweetened with honey, flavoured with nutmeg and a whisper of saffron. The result separates into curds and whey, which you're meant to consume together despite every instinct screaming that this is wrong. She sips hers with evident satisfaction while you struggle not to grimace. Here's where dietary sleep advice becomes delightfully contradictory. Different authorities recommend opposite approaches. Doctor: Kellogg insists on minimal evening food, preventing the digestive strain that disrupts rest. Doctor: Salisbury of steak fame prescribes a substantial meat-based bedtime meal, claiming protein provides nocturnal sustaining power. Dr. Graham, the graham cracker inventor, demands complete abstinence from food after 6 p.m. While Dr. Beaumont suggests small, frequent nighttime snacks to maintain metabolic equilibrium. They can't all be right, but they're all equally confident, leaving you to navigate contradictory dietary dogmas. The timing of meals becomes almost mystical in its precision. One manual insists you must finish dinner by 6:30 p.m. sharp, allowing exactly 4 hours for primary digestion before attempting sleep. Another demands a small snack at 9 p.m. to prevent nocturnal hunger pangs from disrupting rest. A third proposes eating your largest meal at noon and consuming only digestible liquids after 3 p.m. Following all this advice simultaneously would require a personal chef and the organisational skills of a military quartermaster. Certain foods achieve legendary status in the Victorian sleep canon. Lettuce, as mentioned, is credited with powerful soporific properties, supposedly. Even Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit falls asleep after eating too much. Celery, particularly celery seeds steeped as tea, becomes fashionable as a nerve calmer. Poppy seeds, in quantities too small to have any actual opiate effect, get sprinkled on everything like some kind of sleep-inducing fairy dust. And bananas, newly available due to improved shipping, are touted as the tropical sleep fruit, though mostly they're just popular because they're exotic and expensive. Here's a genuinely quirky detail that'll make you smile. Some Victorian sleep enthusiasts practice somnambulistic fasting, consuming nothing but water and weak tea after sunrise, believing that empty stomachs sleep deeper. Others advocate the opposite, preventive nocturnal nutrition, eating small amounts every 2 hours throughout the night to maintain digestive continuity. These approaches require either extraordinary discipline or the kind of sleep disruption they're meant to cure, creating delicious circular logic. The forbidden foods list reads like a catalogue of anything enjoyable. Coffee and tea are obvious culprits, though the British struggle mightily with the idea of abandoning their evening tea ritual. Chocolate, that diabolical stimulant, must be avoided after noon. Cheese, particularly aged varieties, supposedly causes nightmares, a belief that persists even today without much scientific backing. Cucumbers are deemed dangerously indigestible, certain to cause troubled sleep and possibly spiritual corruption. The Victorian approach to dietary sleep hygiene seems designed to remove all pleasure from eating while maximising anxiety about every bite. Mrs. Pemberton presents you with a weekly meal plan designed to optimise somnolent nutrition. Monday features bland fish and rice. Tuesday offers boiled chicken with steamed roots. Wednesday brings more fish, differently boiled. The pattern continues with soul-crushing monotony. Each day's menu carefully calibrated for maximum dullness and minimum stimulation. You'd probably fall asleep from boredom if not from any actual nutritional benefit. But some Victorian dietary wisdom accidentally stumbles onto truth. The recommendation to avoid heavy meals before bed does align with modern understanding of digestion and sleep. The suggestion that caffeine interferes with rest is obviously correct. The observation that some people sleep poorly after spicy or rich foods reflects genuine individual variation in digestive response. buried beneath layers of pseudoscience and dietary dogma. There are kernels of practical wisdom waiting to be discovered. The supplement industry, predictably, offers shortcuts to proper sleep nutrition. You can purchase concentrated soporific essences, supposedly containing the sleep-inducing properties of lettuce, celery, and hops in convenient dropper form. Nocturnal nutriment pills promise to provide all necessary bedtime nutrition without the burden of actual eating. Morphian mineral waters, infused with various salts and minerals, claim to balance your sleep chemistry through hydration alone. Mrs. Pemberton's most elaborate recommendation involves the graduated evening digestive protocol, a system so complex it requires written instructions. You begin with a substantial lunch at precisely 1 p.m. At 4 p.m, you consume a small portion of transitional foods, perhaps toast with honey. At 7 p.m. comes the light supper of approved soporific items. At 9 p.m, you sip a sleep-promoting beverage. At 10 p.m, you might have a single plain biscuit if absolutely necessary. The whole production requires constant clock watching and transforms eating from pleasure to mathematical exercise. As Mrs., Pemberton launches into an explanation of why root vegetables eaten after sunset disrupt the body's downward energy flow. You nod politely while contemplating the simple joy of eating what you want when you want it. Perhaps, you think, the real sleep disruptor isn't improper nutrition but the anxiety generated by trying to follow 17 contradictory dietary regimens simultaneously. That night, you compromise a light evening meal, nothing too heavy or stimulating, followed by warm milk because it's comforting rather than scientifically sound. Your stomach settles, your mind quiets, and you drift towards sleep without performing dietary calculations or worrying about whether your last bite of bread has doomed you to nocturnal wakefulness. Sometimes the best bedtime snack is the one that brings comfort rather than compliance. Your cousin Edmund, recently returned from a health retreat in the Swiss Alps, arrives at your door with the evangelical fervour of the newly converted. His face glows with what he insists is oxygenated vitality, and he can barely contain his excitement about what he calls atmospheric sleep therapy. You brace yourself for another Victorian sleep cure adventure, though this one promises to take place outdoors, which at least offers a change of scenery from parlours and laboratories. Fresh air, Edmund declares, flinging open your windows despite the chilly evening breeze, is the most overlooked sleep remedy of our age. We seal ourselves in stuffy chambers, breathing the same stale exhalations all night, and wonder why we can't rest. The solution is radical exposure to the elements. He makes it sound like a religious awakening. This discovery that breathing outdoor air might be pleasant, though his approach goes far beyond simply cracking a window. The Victorian fresh air obsession for sleep stems from legitimate concerns about indoor air quality in an era of coal fires, gas lighting and minimal ventilation. But it spirals into extremes that would make modern people question their ancestors' sanity. You're about to discover that fresh air isn't just about opening windows, it's an entire lifestyle philosophy involving sleeping arrangements that blur the line between bedroom and wilderness. Edmund produces architectural drawings for what he calls a pneumatic sleeping chamber, essentially a screened porch attached to your bedroom, allowing you to sleep in what amounts to a controlled outdoor environment. The design includes adjustable louvers to regulate airflow, screens to prevent insects from feasting on you while you slumber, and a retractable roof for nights when you want to sleep directly under the stars. It's camping for people too refined to actually go camping, bringing the wilderness to you rather than you to it. But that's just the beginning. Edmund's alpine retreat featured something called graduated atmospheric exposure therapy, where guests progressively adapted to sleeping in increasingly outdoor conditions. Week 1 involved sleeping with windows open. Week 2 added sleeping porches. Week 3 brought rooftop sleeping platforms. By week 4, devotees were supposedly sleeping in open meadows, wrapped in wool blankets, communing with nature in ways that sound either transcendent or hypothermic depending on your perspective. Historians still argue whether the Victorian fresh air sleep movement produced genuine health benefits or simply gave wealthy people an excuse to build elaborate outdoor sleeping structures while congratulating themselves on their progressive health consciousness. The theoretical basis combines accurate observations about indoor air quality with wildly speculative ideas about atmospheric composition and its effects on rest. Victorian doctors correctly note that stuffy rooms filled with coal gas and human exhalations aren't ideal sleeping environments. They then extrapolate this into elaborate theories about nocturnal miasmas, stagnant air poisoning, and the need for atmospheric circulation to prevent sleep disruption. Some practitioners measure air quality using canaries or analysing the morning condensation on windows, creating pseudoscientific rituals around what's essentially the common-sense notion that stuffy rooms are unpleasant. Edmund shows you catalogues from companies specialising in outdoor sleeping apparatus. There's the window bed, a mattress mounted on a platform that extends outside your window, allowing you to sleep literally hanging out of your house. The balcony sleeper, a weatherproof tent that attaches to existing balconies, creating a private outdoor chamber. And the truly ambitious rooftop sleep pavilion, a permanent structure atop your house complete with adjustable walls, retractable ceiling, and heating elements for cold nights because apparently sleeping outside means different things to different people. The most extreme fresh air advocates sleep outdoors year-round, regardless of weather. Edmund describes fellow retreat guests who slept on rooftop platforms through alpine winter nights, buried under mountains of wool blankets and furs, their breath crystallizing in the frigid air. They claimed this cold air therapy produced the deepest, most restorative sleep imaginable, though you suspect they were simply too cold to move much, which they mistook for restful stillness. Here's a delightfully quirky detail. Some Victorian outdoor sleeping enthusiasts developed elaborate protocols for transitioning between indoor and outdoor environments. You couldn't just walk from your warm house directly onto a chilly sleeping porch that would shock the system. Instead, you progressed through a series of increasingly cold rooms, allowing your body to gradually adapt. The wealthiest adherents built homes with actual temperature transition chambers, creating thermal gradients that would impress modern scientific facilities, but mainly demonstrate that money can't buy common sense. The children's outdoor sleeping movement becomes particularly fashionable, with affluent parents convinced that fresh air cures everything from weak constitutions to moral failings. Nurseries feature large windows or sleeping porches where children bed down in all weather, bundled in sleeping bags designed to leave only their faces exposed. Schools adopt the practice, with students napping outdoors as part of their daily routine. The sight of rows of children sleeping on porches becomes commonplace in progressive households, a badge of modern, scientific parenting. Edmund's most controversial recommendation involves the atmospheric sleep gradient method, where you position your bed to align with natural air currents. South-facing windows supposedly provide energizing morning breezes, while north-facing arrangements offer calming nocturnal flows. East windows deliver awakening dawn airs, and west windows provide settling sunset atmospheres. Your bed becomes a compass rose, oriented to invisible atmospheric patterns, turning sleep into a navigational exercise. The clothing industry responds with specialized outdoor sleeping garments. You can purchase pneumatic sleep suits, essentially wearable sleeping bags with face holes constructed from wool, flannel, or even experimental materials like rubberized canvas. There are atmospheric exposure nightcaps, designed to cover your head while leaving your face exposed to beneficial night air, and thermal regulation sleeping gloves, that supposedly maintain optimal hand temperature while your body acclimates to outdoor conditions. It's an entire wardrobe for people determined to make sleeping uncomfortable in pursuit of health. Some fresh air sleeping facilities offer what they call controlled wilderness experiences. You sleep in what appears to be an outdoor setting surrounded by potted plants, with recordings of nature sounds, artificial breezes from hidden fans, but you're actually in a carefully managed indoor environment designed to simulate outdoors without actual weather exposure. It's the Victorian equivalent of a nature documentary, selling the idea of fresh air without requiring actual commitment to the elements. The medical establishment splits on outdoor sleeping, as they do on most Victorian health trends. Conservative physicians warn about pneumonia, exposure, and the dangers of sleeping in night air, which older medical traditions considered poisonous. Progressive doctors counter that indoor air, heavy with coal smoke and human emanations, poses greater risks than fresh outdoor atmosphere. The debate generates impressive amounts of published research, most of it confirming whatever position the author started with. Edmund presents you with plans for converting your bedroom into what he calls a semi-permeable sleep environment, a room with walls that can open completely to the outside, transforming from enclosed chamber to open pavilion depending on weather and preference. The engineering is actually quite clever, with sliding panels, retractable screens, and adjustable awnings creating flexibility unknown in traditional architecture. It's also prohibitively expensive and requires essentially rebuilding your entire bedroom. But Edmund assures you the investment in sleep quality justifies any cost, the compromise position, adopted by those unwilling to sleep in actual outdoors but wanting to appear progressive. Involves strategic window management. You open specific windows at specific times, creating calculated cross breezes. You install window boxes with particular plants meant to purify air as it enters your chamber. You purchase specialized window screens that supposedly filter while allowing maximum airflow. It's fresh air sleeping for people who prefer their nature mediated by architecture and equipment. As Edmund finally departs, leaving behind enough pamphlets and diagrams to wallpaper your room, you stand at your newly opened window, breathing the evening air. There's something genuinely pleasant about the cool breeze, the distant sounds of the city settling for night, the freshness after a day in stuffy indoor spaces. Perhaps the fresh air advocates have stumbled onto something real, even if they've buried it under elaborate theories and expensive apparatus. That night, you sleep with your window open not because of atmospheric gradients or pneumatic therapy, but simply because the fresh air feels nice. No special equipment, no graduated exposure protocol, just a window and a willingness to let the outside in. Your sleep comes easier, your dreams feel clearer, and whether that's oxygen levels or simply the psychological comfort of connection to the wider world hardly matters. Sometimes the best cure is the simplest one, even if Victorians need to complicate it with science and architecture before they'll try it. The window stays open, the air flows freely, and you rest in the gentle breeze of straightforward common sense. You're awakened at an ungodly hour by a tremendous cacophony from the neighbouring townhouse, a mechanical grinding mixed with what sounds like ocean waves, punctuated by irregular clanking. Stumbling to your window, you discover the source, Mr. Ashworth, yes, Mrs. Ashworth's husband. Making this the third Ashworth you've encountered in your sleep cure odyssey, has installed what he proudly calls a somnambulistic sound generator on his property. When you confront him about the noise, he's genuinely confused by your complaint. But this is precisely the point. He explains, we're conducting experiments in acoustic sleep therapy. The Victorian relationship with sound and sleep is magnificently contradictory. On one hand, there's obsession with silence, the belief that perfect quietude is essential for rest. On the other, there's fascination with specific sounds that supposedly induce drowsiness. The result is a peculiar arms race between noise-making devices meant to promote sleep and elaborate systems designed to eliminate every whisper and creak from the sleeping environment. Mr. Ashworth invites you to examine his sound apparatus, and you find yourself in what resembles a Victorian sound laboratory. The central device is a water-powered mechanism that creates continuous rushing sounds, supposedly mimicking natural waterfalls or ocean surf. Attached to it are various drums, bells, and resonating chambers that could be engaged or disengaged to modify the acoustic output. There's even a setting he calls maternal heartbeat, which produces a rhythmic thumping meant to recreate the sounds heard in the womb, though how he's determined this is anyone's guess. The principle, Mr. Ashworth lectures while adjusting various levers and valves, is that the human mind requires acoustic stimulation to transition into sleep. Pure silence is actually counterproductive. It allows every small noise to become a distraction. Consistent, predictable sound creates an auditory blanket that smooths the path to slumber. This is actually not terrible reasoning, accidentally prefiguring white noise machines by a century, though his mechanical implementation is rather more disruptive than soothing. Historians still argue whether Victorian sound machines helped anyone sleep, or simply created noise pollution that made entire neighbourhoods miserable, with success likely depending on whether you owned the device or lived next to someone who did. The market for sleep-inducing sound devices explodes in the 1880s and 1890s. There's the Aeolian sleep harp, mounted outside your window to catch breezes and produce ethereal tones. The mechanical lullaby box, essentially a music box that plays the same simple melody for hours. The Swinger's pneumatic sound soother, which uses bellows and pipes to create gentle whooshing noises. And the tidal sleep simulator, a complex apparatus involving water sloshing through chambers to recreate ocean rhythms. Each promises to be the acoustic key that unlocks perfect rest. But for every sound-generating device, there's an equally elaborate silence-creating system. You visit Mrs. Hartford's home to discover she's taken the opposite approach. Entirely her bedroom is a temple of absolute quietude. The walls are lined with cork and felt, creating sound dampening layers. The windows are triple glazed with air gaps between panes. The door sits within a padded frame, sealed with weather stripping. Even the furniture legs rest on felt pads to prevent any scraping sounds. It's less a bedroom than a sensory deprivation chamber. And Mrs. Hartford speaks in whispers even during daylight hours, as if afraid to disturb the sacred silence. Any sound, she breathes, barely audible, disrupts the delicate process of sleep initiation. The human ear remains alert even during rest, monitoring the environment for threats. Only in perfect silence can the auditory system truly relax. She created an acoustic tomb where the loudest sound is your own heartbeat, and she swears it's transformed her sleep. You find it profoundly unsettling, like being sealed alive, but she radiates the calm of someone who's found their solution, however extreme. The theoretical basis for acoustic sleep therapy draws from legitimate observations about noise and rest, then veers into speculation about sonic frequencies and their effects on consciousness. Some practitioners claim that certain pitches induce drowsiness, low rumbles supposedly slow brainwaves, while high tones create alertness. Others insist rhythm is paramount, with specific beats per minute in training the body towards sleep. A few propose that natural sounds carry organic harmonics absent from mechanical or urban noise, making them inherently more soporific. Here's a genuinely fascinating, quirky detail. Some Victorian sound sleep devices incorporate live animals. The feline sleep companion is literally a cat, selected for its purring abilities and placed in a box near your bed, with sound holes allowing the purr to permeate your chamber. The avian somnolence chamber houses specific bird species whose nighttime calls supposedly promote drowsiness, And yes, there are actually cricket boxes, containers of crickets placed strategically around your bedroom to create what entrepreneurs claim is nature's perfect sleep symphony. The maintenance alone would keep you awake, but apparently some people find insect choruses soothing. The competing philosophies create neighbourhood tensions. Mr. Ashworth's sound generator disturbs Mrs. Hertford's silent sanctuary. His other neighbour operates a melodic sleep pavilion, playing soft piano music through open windows until midnight. Someone down the street has installed wind chimes that tinkle constantly, marketed as Aeolian sleep therapy. The resulting acoustic chaos means nobody sleeps well, though everyone's convinced their particular approach is scientifically sound, while their neighbours' methods are obvious quackery. Some establishments offer acoustic sleep consultations, where practitioners analyse your home's sound environment and prescribe remedies. They use primitive sound meters, essentially membranes that vibrate with noise, measuring amplitude through needle deflection to identify problematic frequencies. They map your bedroom's acoustic landscape, noting which corners amplify street sounds or where house-settling noises concentrate. The resulting reports are impressively detailed and only occasionally useful. The graduated sound conditioning program becomes fashionable among those who can't decide between silence and sound. You begin by sleeping in complete quiet, then gradually introduce gentle sounds, progressively conditioning yourself to rest amid acoustic stimulation. The theory suggests you'll eventually sleep anywhere, regardless of noise levels, having trained your auditory system to ignore disturbances. The reality is you spend weeks adjusting to different sound environments without sleeping particularly well in any of them. Portable sound devices emerge for travellers unable to access their preferred acoustic environment away from home. There's the Traveller's Sound Sphere, a helmet-like device that surrounds your head with your choice of soothing sounds while blocking external noise. The Pocket Sleep Chime, a small music box that plays lullabies on demand. And the Portable Silence Hood, which is exactly what it sounds like, a soundproof bag for your head, complete with breathing holes, making you look like a Victorian bank robber attempting to sleep. The scientific community attempts actual research into sound and sleep, conducting experiments that involve monitoring subjects in various acoustic environments. Some findings are genuinely useful, confirming that sudden, irregular noises disrupt sleep more than constant background sound. Others are entertainingly wrong, like the study concluding that sounds in F-sharp major are inherently more soporific than those in B-flat minor, or the research claiming that clockwise rotating sounds induce sleep while counterclockwise rotating sounds create alertness. Mr. Ashworth demonstrates his device's various settings, each producing distinctly different acoustic output. There's ocean surf mechanical swooshing, alpine stream tinkling and gurgling, gentle rain, irregular pattering, and maternal comfort, that odd heartbeat simulation. He cycles through them all, creating a bizarre medley of artificial nature sounds that would be more likely to induce confusion than sleep in any reasonable person. As you return home, your ears ringing from Mr. Ashworth's enthusiastic demonstration, you contemplate your own bedroom's soundscape. Street noise filters through your window, carriages clattering, distant voices, the city's endless murmur. It's not silent, certainly not by Mrs. Hertford's standards, but it's familiar. Your house settles with comfortable creaks. The clock ticks its patient rhythm. These sounds don't keep you awake because they're woven into your environment. Expected rather than alarming. That night, you make no special acoustic arrangements, no sound generator, no silence chamber, no cricket boxes or purring cats. You simply lie in your normal bedroom with its normal sounds. And you realise that perhaps the secret isn't achieving perfect silence or optimal sonic frequency. Maybe it's just becoming comfortable with your auditory environment. Whatever that might be. The clock ticks, the house settles, the city murmurs, and somewhere in that familiar symphony, you find your rest. Sometimes the best sleep sound is simply the sound of home, unremarkable and uncontrived. The Victorian sound wars continue around you, but you've declared peace with your ears. Your Tuesday morning post brings an unexpected parcel wrapped in lavender-scented paper, accompanied by a note from your Aunt Cordelia. Since modern methods have failed you, perhaps ancient aromatics will succeed where science falters. You unwrap the package to discover an impressive collection of glass vials, dried herbs, and a contraption that looks like a tea kettle mated with a chandelier. Welcome to the world of Victorian scent-based slumber methods, where the path to sleep runs directly through your nostrils. Aunt Cordelia arrives later that afternoon to supervise your introduction to olfactory sleep therapy. Her own clothes emanating competing fragrances, lavender, chamomile, and something vaguely medicinal you can't quite identify. The ancients understood, she declares, arranging her aromatic arsenal on your bedside table. That smell is the most direct route to the primitive brain. While your conscious mind frets and worries, your olfactory system can simply command sleep. The Victorian fascination with scent and sleep has legitimate roots in herbalism and aromatherapy traditions stretching back millennia. But as with everything in this era, it's been elaborated into an entire industry of specialized equipment, competing theories, and products that range from genuinely soothing to potentially hazardous. You're about to discover that Victorians approach bedtime fragrances with the same excessive enthusiasm they bring to every other aspect of sleep science. Aunt Cordelia begins with the basics: aromatic pillows. She presents you with a selection, the Lavender Dreams pillow, stuffed with dried lavender flowers until it's more sachet than cushion, the Hop Sleep pillow, filled with the same flowers used in beer brewing and smelling like a brewery, and the Chamomile Repose pillow, which releases a gentle apple-like scent when you rest your head upon it. Each pillow comes with elaborate instructions about proper positioning, optimal replacement schedules, and warnings about diminishing aromatic potency over time. The pillow is merely the foundation, she continues. Moving to more complex devices, she demonstrates the nocturnal vapor cabinet, a small steam apparatus positioned bedside that heats aromatic waters, releasing fragrant mists into your sleeping chamber throughout the night. You fill the reservoir with various herbal infusions, lavender, valerian, orange blossom, and the device gently perfumes your room while supposedly humidifying the air for optimal respiratory function during sleep. Historians still argue whether Victorian aromatic sleep aids worked through genuine biochemical effects of essential oils, or simply through the power of ritual and expectation, though modern aromatherapy research suggests both mechanisms may have been at play. The theoretical basis combines traditional herbalism with Victorian pseudochemistry. Different scents supposedly affect different nervous centres. Lavender calms the agitation centre. Chamomile soothes the worry nodes. Valerian suppresses the wakefulness glands. These anatomical features don't exist, of course, but the theories sound impressively scientific when Aunt Cordelia describes them while gesturing at phrenological charts, showing where various sleep-disrupting bumps supposedly reside on your skull. Here's where the aromatic approach becomes genuinely elaborate scent layering. Aunt Cordelia doesn't believe in single fragrances. She advocates complex olfactory compositions designed to address multiple aspects of sleeplessness simultaneously. You start with a base note of sandalwood for foundational calm. Add middle notes of rose and neroli for emotional settling. Then finish with top notes of bergamot and petitgrain for final mental quieting. Creating the perfect sleep scent becomes like composing a symphony, except the instruments are flowers and the audience is your exhausted brain. The equipment for delivering these scents ranges from simple to spectacularly complicated. There are aromatic candles formulated with sleep-inducing herbs. Though you're meant to extinguish them before actually sleeping, the Victorians haven't completely abandoned fire safety. There are scent-diffusing lamps, which warm essential oils without flame, releasing fragrances through heated ceramic. And there are pneumatic aroma dispersers, elaborate devices with fans and vents that circulate perfumed air throughout your chamber in carefully timed intervals. Aunt Cordelia's most impressive device is the somnolent scent shower, a ceiling-mounted apparatus that periodically releases puffs of aromatic powder that drift down like fragrant snow. You're supposed to time the releases for moments when you're transitioning between wake and sleep, providing olfactory assistance during the critical liminal phase. The result is you're lying in bed being dusted with lavender powder like a Victorian beignet, which is either therapeutic or absurd depending on your perspective. The portable aromatic sleep aids are equally creative. There's the travelling scent locket, a pendant containing aromatic compounds you can sniff discreetly before sleep, perfect for maintaining your scent routine while away from home. The pocket sleep sachet, a small fabric bag of dried herbs you tuck into your nightshirt, and the nasal sleep plugs, which are exactly what they sound like, aromatic inserts for your nostrils, ensuring you breathe nothing but sleep-inducing fragrances all night. Aunt Cordelia recommends these for severe cases, though you suspect severe discomfort would outweigh any aromatic benefits. Here's a delightfully quirky detail: some Victorian scent enthusiasts create personalised sleep fragrances based on astrological charts, birth date numerology, or phrenological readings. Your constitutional scent profile supposedly reveals which aromatics will work best for your particular nervous system. Aries might need stimulating scents paradoxically used for sleep, while Pisces require gentle aquatic notes. Your skull bumps indicate whether you need floral or woody base notes. It's astrology meets aromatherapy meets nonsense, and people pay handsomely for customized scent prescriptions. The forbidden scent list is as important as the recommended one. Aunt Cordelia warns against mint, which supposedly stimulates rather than sedates. Citrus scents, except in carefully measured doses, create alertness. Anything woody except sandalwood allegedly provokes dreams rather than preventing them. And never, under any circumstances, should you smell roses and jasmine simultaneously. The combination supposedly creates olfactory discord that disrupts sleep cycles for days. Some practitioners advocate what they call negative scenting, deliberately using unpleasant smells to make your waking hours so olfactorily offensive that sleep becomes a refuge. You'd spend your day surrounded by slight disagreeable odours, then retreat to your beautifully scented bedroom with relief and gratitude. This seems to miss the point of making life pleasant, but Victorian sleep therapy often prioritises results over enjoying the process. The scent-based sleep industry produces increasingly specialised products. There's Dream Direction incense, different formulations meant to encourage specific types of dreams pleasant, prophetic, or creatively inspiring. Nightmare Prevention Potpourri, a mixture of protective herbs meant to ward off bad dreams. And Lucid Dream Aromatics, scents that supposedly allow you to remain aware during dreams, controlling their content and outcome. Whether any of this works is debatable, but it smells lovely while failing. Aunt Cordelia's most controversial recommendation involves the Ascending Aromatic Protocol, where you use different scents at different times throughout your sleep preparation. 90 minutes before bed, you burn energizing scents to complete the day's activities. 60 minutes before, you switch to transitional fragrances that signal approaching rest. 30 minutes before, you introduce calming scents. Finally, at bedtime, you employ pure soporific aromatics. The routine requires constantly tending to various scent sources, essentially keeping you awake to prepare for sleep. The social aspects of aromatic sleep therapy create interesting dynamics. Scent preferences become topics of polite conversation. You discuss your sleep fragrances the way others discuss wine preferences. Gifting aromatic sleep aids becomes fashionable, with elaborate presentations of essential oils and custom-blended sleep sachets. Some hostesses even provide scented guest rooms, asking visitors' aromatic preferences the way modern hotels offer pillow menus. As Aunt Cordelia finally departs, leaving behind enough aromatic equipment to stock a perfumery, your bedroom smells like a botanical garden exploded inside a pharmacy. Lavender competes with chamomile, sandalwood mingles with rose, and somewhere beneath it all, valerian adds its distinctive note that's charitably described as earthy, but honestly smells like dirty socks. It's olfactory chaos masquerading as therapeutic intervention. That night you compromise. You keep one simple lavender sachet near your pillow, not the elaborate pillows stuffed to bursting, just a small cloth bag of dried flowers. The scent is gentle, familiar, pleasant without being overwhelming. No vapour cabinets, no scent showers, no nasal plugs or ascending protocols, just a hint of lavender in the air, subtle enough to notice but not dominate. As you drift towards sleep, the fragrance creates a small zone of calm, a sensory signal that this time is for rest. Whether it's the actual chemical compounds in lavender or simply the association you're building between the scent and bedtime hardly matters. The aroma becomes part of your evening ritual, a gentle marker of transition from day to night. Sometimes the best aromatherapy is the simplest one pleasant scent, lightly applied, creating comfort rather than complexity. The elaborate Victorian scent systems continue their fragrant battles around you, but you found peace in a single sachet of lavender. Unremarkable except for how remarkably well it works. Your physician, Dr. Harrington, examines you with the grave concern of someone about to deliver troubling news, after testing your reflexes, examining your tongue, and performing various other diagnostic rituals of dubious medical value. He announces his conclusion. Your sleep difficulties stem from improper nocturnal posture. You're sleeping wrong. You didn't realise sleeping could be done incorrectly, but apparently the Victorians have discovered 17 different ways to position your body incorrectly during rest, each with its own catalogue of health consequences. Dr. Harrington produces a leather-bound volume titled The Science of Somnolent Positioning, complete with detailed anatomical drawings showing the supposedly correct angles for every joint, the optimal alignment of spine and skull, the precise degree of leg elevation necessary for proper circulation during sleep. According to this text, the way you've been sleeping all your life is essentially slow suicide, disrupting everything from digestion to moral character through poor postural choices. The supine position, he lectures, gesturing at an illustration of a person lying flat on their back, is the foundation of healthful rest, provided the head is elevated precisely 4 inches and tilted 7 degrees to the right to facilitate optimal cerebral drainage. This specificity is impressive until you consider that he has no actual way to measure cerebral drainage or any evidence that it needs facilitating. But Victorian sleep science loves precise numbers, even when they are entirely fabricated. The Victorian obsession with sleep posture reflects legitimate understanding that position affects comfort and health, taken to extremes that transform your bed into a geometry problem requiring protractors and spirit levels to solve properly. You're about to discover that the simple act of lying down has been analysed, dissected, and complicated beyond all recognition. Historians still argue whether prescribed sleep positions provided any real benefit or simply gave anxious insomniacs something new to worry about, replacing simple rest with a nightly performance of anatomical precision. Dr. Harrington's prescribed sleeping position requires multiple supporting devices. There's a specially angled pillow to maintain that mysterious 7-degree head tilt, cushions for positioning your arms at optimal angles, a bolster for elevating your knees exactly 12 inches, and what he calls a spinal alignment board, that ensures your back maintains its natural curve while preventing nocturnal vertebral wandering. Which sounds alarming but probably isn't a real thing. But wait, other authorities prescribe entirely different positions. Doctor. Pemberton, yes, another Pemberton. You're convinced they're multiplying insists that side sleeping is superior, specifically the left side to avoid cardiac compression. His system involves an elaborate pillow arrangement, one between your knees, one supporting your upper arm, a small cushion for your lower arm, and a specially designed headrest that prevents your ear from folding uncomfortably. Sleeping becomes an engineering project requiring 15 minutes of setup before you can even attempt to rest. Meanwhile, Doctor. Salisbury advocates the prone position, sleeping on your stomach, claiming it provides optimal digestive positioning and prevents the tongue from blocking airways. His recommended apparatus includes a face cradle borrowed from massage table design, allowing you to breathe while face down, plus supports for your chest and hips to prevent postural strain. You look less like someone trying to sleep and more like someone participating in experimental aviation testing. Here's where the postural sleep science becomes genuinely bizarre. Some practitioners prescribe changing positions throughout the night in specific sequences. You begin on your back for the initial descent phase, transition to your left side for deep sleep consolidation, shift to your right side for dream processing, and finish on your back again for pre-awakening preparation. This requires either superhuman sleep discipline or defeats the entire purpose of unconsciousness, turning rest into a choreographed performance you're too asleep to execute. The equipment market responds enthusiastically to positional sleep anxiety. There's the Nocturnal Position Trainer, a device with springs and alerts that supposedly teaches your body to maintain proper position even while unconscious. The anti-rolling sleep bolsters, essentially padded barriers preventing you from shifting positions during the night. And the postural sleep frame, which looks like a torture rack designed to hold you in prescribed positions through a system of straps and supports that seem more likely to induce panic than peaceful rest. One particularly creative inventor patents the rotating sleep platform, a bed that slowly turns throughout the night, ensuring you spend equal time in all positions and thus receive the supposed benefits of each without having to consciously change positions. The device includes timers and mechanical rotation mechanisms, creating a bed that's essentially a very slow rotisserie for humans. Users report motion sickness rather than improved sleep, but the inventor insists they simply need longer adjustment periods. Here's a genuinely quirky detail that'll make you smile. Some Victorian sleep manuals include postural compatibility charts for married couples, determining which positions work when sharing a bed. The synchronized supine method has both partners on their backs in precise parallel alignment. The complementary lateral position involves both sleeping on their left sides, like nested spoons, at specific angles to each other. The interdisciplinary postural protocol actually recommends separate beds to avoid postural compromise, which tells you something about Victorian romance. The forbidden positions are as important as the recommended ones. Sleeping with arms above your head supposedly causes nocturnal limb drainage and morning weakness. Crossing your legs creates circulatory impediment. Sleeping with your neck at improper angles invites cerebral congestion. And sleeping in a fetal position, the way humans naturally curl up when comfortable, is deemed infantile regression, unsuitable for proper adults. Comfort is apparently less important than conforming to anatomical diagrams. Doctor. Harrington demonstrates proper positioning using an articulated mannequin, adjusting each joint with the precision of a clockmaker. The resulting pose looks profoundly uncomfortable, rigid, angular, maintained through conscious effort rather than natural relaxation. This, he announces with satisfaction, is the optimal human sleeping configuration. The mannequin looks like it's awaiting rigor mortis rather than rest, but he's convinced he's solved the sleep crisis through geometry. The theoretical justification involves elaborate pseudo-anatomy about how different positions affect various organs and systems. Sleeping on your right side supposedly aids liver function, but impairs heart efficiency. Left side sleeping helps digestion but may compress the spleen, whatever that means. Back sleeping allows proper spinal alignment but risks gravitational tongue displacement. The human body becomes a puzzle where every piece's position affects everything else in ways that sound scientific but rarely are. Some practitioners incorporate measurements into their postural prescriptions. They assess your height, weight, and proportions, then calculate optimal pillow heights, mattress firmness, and support placement using mathematical formulas. You receive a personalised sleep position specification chart with precise measurements for every anatomical angle. Following it requires tools, time, and the kind of dedication usually reserved for religious devotion. The social implications are rather amusing. Proper sleep posture becomes a mark of refinement and self-discipline. You discuss your sleeping position at dinner parties the way others discuss exercise routines. Guests visiting overnight receive instruction in household positional preferences. Some homes are strictly supine establishments. Others advocate lateral sleeping, creating postural tribalism in bedroom communities. Training yourself into prescribed positions requires various techniques. Some use meditation and visualization, imagining their bodies locked in optimal alignment. Others employ physical restraints. Yes, actually tying themselves into position with soft straps to prevent nocturnal wandering from prescribed postures. A few hire sleep positioning attendants who periodically check throughout the night, adjusting limbs and pillows to maintain proper configuration. It's sleep as performance art, requiring audience and direction. As Dr. Harrington finally concludes his postural lecture, presenting you with diagrams, measurements, and equipment recommendations totaling several pages. You feel exhausted from simply contemplating the complexity of lying down correctly. Sleep, that most natural of activities, has been transformed into a technical challenge requiring education, equipment, and constant vigilance. That night, you ignore every prescription. You lie down however feels comfortable. Adjust your pillow to whatever height suits you, and let your body find its own position without geometric precision or anatomical anxiety. Your arms go where they want, your legs settle naturally, your spine curves comfortably without consulting alignment charts, and you sleep, not because you've achieved optimal postural configuration, but because you've stopped trying to force your body into prescribed positions and simply allowed it to rest as it knows how. Sometimes the right position is simply the one that feels right. Geometry be damned. Do you remember when lying down was simple? The haberdashery on Bond Street has expanded its evening wear section to include an entire department devoted to what the elegant signage calls nocturnal therapeutic garments. You've been summoned here by your fashionable friend Lady Pemberton, yet another Pemberton. You're keeping count now who insists that your sleep troubles stem from wearing the wrong clothing to bed. Apparently the Victorians have transformed nightwear from simple comfort into a complex science involving fabrics, cuts, and features that supposedly optimize your body's transition into unconsciousness. Lady Pemberton greets you amidst racks of specialized sleeping costumes that look like they belong in a theatrical production rather than a bedroom. The modern sleeper, she declares, fingering various garments, requires specialized attire engineered for optimal rest. Your grandmother's simple nightgown is as obsolete as her oil lamps. She gestures toward an array of sleeping garments that range from the merely elaborate to the spectacularly absurd. The Victorian sleeping costume industry emerges from legitimate observations about comfort and temperature regulation during sleep, then explodes into an entire fashion movement complete with competing designers. Seasonal collections, and garments incorporating everything from exotic fabrics to electrical components, you're about to discover that what you wear to bed has become as complicated as what you wear to the opera, only with more pseudoscience and fewer opportunities for public display. The shop assistant, Mr. Whitmore, begins his presentation with the foundation sleep suit, constructed from what he calls somnambulistic silk, essentially regular silk marketed with a sleep-friendly name and premium price. The garment features anatomically optimized seams positioned to avoid pressure points, thermal regulation panels of different fabric weights, and nocturnal ventilation ports, which are just strategically placed openings. It's impressive until you realise it's a nightshirt with extra steps and quadruple the cost. But that's merely the entry level. Mr. Whitmore unveils the graduated compression sleep ensemble. Inspired by medical stockings but applied to entire body coverage, the theory suggests that gentle pressure on limbs encourages circulation and relaxation, promoting deeper rest. The reality is you're essentially wearing very expensive long underwear that makes you feel slightly squeezed, like being hugged by your clothing all night. Lady Pemberton swears by hers, though you suspect any garment costing that much would receive enthusiastic testimonials regardless of efficacy. Historians still argue whether specialised sleep clothing provided genuine benefits or simply gave the fashion industry another market to exploit, with some evidence suggesting certain temperature-regulating features were actually helpful while most additions were purely theatrical. Here's where sleeping costumes become genuinely creative: the thermal adaptation nightwear, featuring reversible fabrics that provide different insulation levels depending on which side faces out. You can adjust your sleeping temperature by literally turning your nightgown inside out, which sounds convenient until you consider doing this while half asleep in darkness. There's also the phase change material sleep suit, incorporating wax crystals that supposedly absorb and release heat to maintain optimal body temperature, though mostly they just make the fabric feel oddly stiff and slightly waxy. The magnetic sleep garment combines the Victorian obsession with magnetism with their passion for specialised clothing. Small magnets are sewn into the fabric at points corresponding to acupuncture meridians. Never mind that acupuncture is Chinese and magnetism is Western pseudoscience. The Victorians happily combine incompatible theories when it suits their marketing. Lady Pemberton demonstrates her magnetic nightgown, which allegedly aligns her body's natural energies, but mainly just attracts metal objects in amusing and inconvenient ways. Mr. Whitmore presents the weighted sleep robe, predating modern weighted blankets by using lead shots sewn into quilted pockets throughout the garment. The additional weight supposedly grounds you, preventing restless movement and promoting stillness. It also makes you feel like you're wearing a very soft suit of armour to bed, and the lead component raises health concerns that won't be properly understood for decades. But it's fashionable, expensive, and endorsed by several society physicians, so people eagerly embrace potential heavy metal poisoning in pursuit of better sleep. The most elaborate offering is the complete somnolent wardrobe system, which includes different garments for different stages of sleep preparation. You begin with the transition robe, worn while performing bedtime rituals. You change into the initial sleep tunic for falling asleep. Midway through the night, should you wake, you're meant to switch to the deep rest gown for the sleep cycle's second half. The morning calls for the awakening wrap to ease your transition back to consciousness. It's an entire fashion show performed in your bedroom, turning sleep into a costume drama where you're both performer and audience. Here's a delightfully quirky detail: some sleeping costume designers incorporate aromatherapy directly into the fabrics. The scent-infused sleep chemise features sachets of dried lavender or chamomile sewn into the garment, releasing fragrance as you move. The essential oil sleep shirt has fabric treated with aromatic compounds that supposedly activate with body heat. You're essentially wearing a perfume delivery system to bed, which sounds lovely until you consider that you can't escape the scent even if it gives you a headache, and washing the garment destroys its aromatic properties. The children's sleeping costume market becomes particularly elaborate, with parents convinced that proper nightwear prevents everything from nightmares to bedwetting. There are anti-nightmare gowns featuring cheerful patterns and supposedly protective fabrics, nocturnal training suits with built-in moisture alerts for toilet training, and growth optimization sleep uniforms designed to ensure children maintain proper posture while sleeping, supposedly encouraging healthy development. The poor children probably just want comfortable pyjamas, but Victorian parents are determined to optimize every aspect of childhood, including unconsciousness. Lady Pemberton models her personal favourite, the electrostatic sleep ensemble, made from fabrics that supposedly generate beneficial electrical charges through friction. The garment crackles faintly when she moves, creating tiny sparks in darkness that she insists are visible manifestations of therapeutic energy, but are really just static electricity. She looks like she's perpetually on the verge of shocking herself into wakefulness, but she's convinced it's improved her rest immeasurably. The gendered aspects of sleep clothing are predictably Victorian. Men's sleeping suits emphasised masculine vigour even during rest. With structured designs and sober colours, women's sleeping gowns focus on delicate feminine repose, featuring flowing fabrics and decorative elements. The underlying assumption seems to be that even unconscious, one must perform appropriate gender roles, because apparently sleep is another social obligation requiring proper presentation. Some designers incorporate what they call postural correction features into sleeping garments' structured elements that supposedly maintain proper body alignment during rest. There are nightshirts with built-in back supports, sleeping gowns with shoulder braces, and complete sleep suits with subtle boning throughout to prevent nocturnal slouching. You're essentially wearing a corset to bed, which defeats the entire purpose of nightwear being comfortable and unrestricting. The luxury market offers customized sleeping costumes tailored to individual measurements and sleep patterns. A sleep clothing consultant visits your home, observes your sleeping habits, measures your proportions, and designs personalized garments addressing your specific nocturnal needs. The resulting creations cost as much as formal evening wear and are seen by nobody except possibly your spouse. But Victorian sleepers take their bedtime fashion seriously. Mr. Whitmore presents the season's newest innovation, the self-adjusting sleep garment, with drawstrings and fastenings allowing you to modify fit and coverage throughout the night. Too warm, release certain ties for ventilation. Too cool, tight enclosures for warmth. Is essentially a nightgown that requires constant adjustment, turning sleep into an ongoing wardrobe management project. You'd need to wake periodically just to operate your clothing properly. As you depart the haberdashery, Lady Pemberton has convinced you to purchase a modest starter ensemble, merely 3 specialised sleeping garments totalling enough expense to feed a working-class family for a month. The shop wraps them in tissue paper like precious artefacts, and you carry home your therapeutic nightwear, wondering when sleeping became something requiring a specialised wardrobe. That night, you unwrap your new sleeping costume, the foundation sleep suit with its anatomically optimised seams and thermal regulation panels. You put it on, and it's fine. Comfortable enough. Certainly well made. But no more conducive to sleep than your old nightshirt. The silk feels pleasant. The seams are indeed unobtrusive, but you don't feel any more inclined towards slumber than usual. You change back into your regular nightclothes, simple, unfashionable, lacking any therapeutic claims or optimized features. They're soft from washing, familiar, comfortable without complexity. As you settle into bed, you realize that perhaps the best sleeping costume is simply the one you forget you're wearing. The garment that disappears into comfort rather than announcing its presence through special features and scientific claims. Sometimes the finest fabric technology is just soft cotton, worn thin from use, requiring no adjustment or optimization. The Victorian sleeping costume industry continues its fashionable experiments. But you found peace in simple cloth, unremarkable except for how remarkably unremarkable it is. You're awakened not by sound, but by its opposite, an oppressive, almost suffocating darkness so complete that you momentarily panic, unsure if you've gone blind or simply lost all spatial awareness. Fumbling toward where you remember your bedside table standing, your hand encounters heavy fabric instead of wood. Someone has transformed your bedroom into a cave while you slept, and you have a sinking suspicion about who's responsible. Sure enough, Mrs. Weatherby. Miss Weatherby's mother, continuing the pattern of encountering entire family networks in your sleep cure journey, has taken the liberty of installing what she calls a comprehensive light exclusion system in your bedroom as a surprise gift. When you finally locate the exit and stumble into the hallway, she's waiting with the satisfied smile of someone convinced they've solved your problems without bothering to ask if you wanted them solved this way. Light, she announces as if revealing a profound secret, is the enemy of sleep. Every photon that reaches your eye is a tiny dagger of wakefulness. I've created for you a sanctuary of absolute darkness, a void where sleep can flourish unimpeded by visual stimulation. She's essentially turned your bedroom into a sensory deprivation chamber, and she expects you to be grateful. The Victorian relationship with light and sleep is magnificently contradictory, swinging between extremes of total darkness and carefully controlled illumination. On one end, there are darkness devotees like Mrs. Weatherby who believe any light exposure during sleep is harmful. On the other, there are advocates of specific lighting schemes who claim certain wavelengths and intensities actually promote rest. The result is a bewildering array of light-controlling devices, competing theories, and bedroom environments ranging from pitch-black caves to carefully orchestrated luminous installations. Mrs. Weatherby's system's impressively thorough. You'll admit, heavy velvet curtains lined with rubber sheets block all window light. Additional fabric panels cover the walls, absorbing any stray illumination. Even the gap beneath the door has been sealed with a specialized draught excluder that also prevents light seepage. The room achieves darkness so complete that you literally cannot see your hand before your face, which Mrs. Weatherby considers the ideal sleeping environment, and you consider vaguely terrifying. Historians still argue whether Victorian light control methods improved sleep or simply created new anxieties about photon exposure, with some evidence suggesting moderate darkness helps, while absolute light exclusion may increase disorientation and sleep disruption. But Mrs. Weatherby's approach is just one extreme. You visit Mr. Thornbury, yes, the same Thornbury with a rocking bed. Apparently he's become obsessed with every aspect of sleep optimization to discover he's taken the opposite approach. His bedroom features what he calls graduated nocturnal illumination, a complex system of gas lamps with adjustable flames, coloured glass filters, and clockwork timers that create a carefully choreographed light show throughout the night. Complete darkness, Thornbury argues, is unnatural. Even moonlight provides some illumination during outdoor sleep. The key is controlling the quality and intensity of light exposure. His system begins with warm amber light as you prepare for bed, supposedly signalling your body that day is ending. As you drift towards sleep, the lights gradually dim to a faint red glow, red wavelengths being deemed least disruptive to sleep. Throughout the night, the lights cycle through barely perceptible changes, supposedly synchronizing with natural sleep stages. It's a bedroom that's also a planetarium, and you're the celestial body being guided through orbital phases. The theoretical basis for light-based sleep therapy draws from legitimate observations about circadian rhythms and light exposure, then spirals into elaborate pseudoscience about specific wavelengths and their effects on consciousness. Some practitioners claim blue light prevents sleep while amber light encourages it accidentally correct, though their understanding of why is completely wrong. Others insist that pulsing light at specific frequencies entrains brainwaves into sleep-friendly patterns, which sounds scientific but isn't supported by any actual science. Here's where the light control industry becomes genuinely creative specialty sleep candles. Not ordinary candles, but specially formulated versions that supposedly emit soporific illumination. There's the drowsy flame candle, made with waxes that produce minimal light while generating maximum aromatic smoke. The hypnotic flicker candle, designed to create a specific rhythm of light variation meant to induce drowsiness. And the dream candle, which incorporates chemicals that supposedly change flame colour based on room temperature, creating a visual indicator of optimal sleeping conditions. The moonlight simulation system attempts to recreate lunar illumination indoors, using silver-coated reflectors and carefully positioned lamps to mimic moonbeams entering through windows. Some systems include mechanical components that slowly move the artificial moonlight across walls throughout the night, simulating the moon's actual progression across the sky. It's elaborate, expensive, and solves a problem that mainly exists in the minds of people wealthy enough to afford such solutions. One particularly ambitious inventor creates the celestial sleep dome, a bedroom ceiling painted with luminescent stars and constellations that glow softly after lights are extinguished. The glow supposedly mimics sleeping under actual night sky, providing gentle orientation without disruptive brightness. Users report either finding it peacefully calming or disturbingly unnatural, depending on whether they appreciate sleeping in what amounts to a permanent dusk. Here's a delightfully quirky detail. Some Victorian light sleep enthusiasts create elaborate morning awakening light systems, believing that how you transition out of sleep is as important as how you enter it. The dawn simulation apparatus gradually increases light levels starting an hour before your intended wake time, supposedly allowing natural awakening rather than jarring alarm clocks. The most sophisticated versions incorporate coloured filters that shift through dawn-like colour progressions, deep blue to pale pink to golden yellow, creating artificial sunrise in your bedroom, regardless of actual weather conditions. The debate about moonlight becomes particularly heated in Victorian sleep circles. Some insist moonlight is naturally soporific, pointing to the word lunatic and moon's supposed effects on mental states. Others claim moonlight disrupts sleep, causing restlessness and strange dreams. A few advocate positioning beds to receive specific moonlight angles, while others recommend special moon-blocking shutters. The poor moon gets blamed for or credited with everything. Depending on which authority you consult, the portable light control market offers solutions for travellers and those unable to modify their bedrooms permanently. There's the nocturnal eye shade, essentially a sleeping mask but marketed with therapeutic claims about optical darkness therapy. The portable light exclusion tent, a collapsible fabric structure you erect over your bed, creating a dark microenvironment within any room. And the travel darkness kit, including various clips, pins, and fabric pieces allowing you to improvise light blocking wherever you sleep. Mrs. Weatherby demonstrates her personal sleep lighting protocol, which involves complete darkness but with a small orientation lantern, providing the barest illumination just enough to prevent complete spatial disorientation, but supposedly insufficient to disrupt sleep. The lantern uses a red filter, as red light is deemed least harmful, creating an eerie crimson glow that makes your bedroom look like a photography darkroom or possibly a chamber in a Gothic castle. Some practitioners incorporate light-based diagnostic techniques, examining how people respond to different illumination levels to prescribe personalised light sleep protocols. They test your photonic sensitivity, measuring how quickly your pupils dilate in darkness or how much light exposure triggers alertness responses. The resulting prescriptions specify exact light levels measured in candle power or gas flame equivalents, turning bedroom lighting into a precision science requiring meters and calculations. The religious and philosophical implications of bedroom lighting create interesting tensions. Some argue that sleeping in complete darkness is ungodly, that humans were meant to rest under stars and moonlight even after moving indoors. Others insist that artificial light is humanity's gift, allowing us to transcend natural limitations and optimize our environments beyond what nature provides. These debates play out in bedroom design choices, with lighting preferences becoming almost theological positions as Mrs. Weatherby finally departs, leaving your bedroom transformed into a vision of optimal darkness. You stand in the hallway contemplating your options. You could embrace the void, sleeping in absolute blackness like a cave-dwelling creature. Or you could reject it entirely, seeking Thornbury's graduated illumination. Or perhaps there's a middle path, some reasonable compromise between these extremes. That night, you modify Mrs. Weatherby's system. You remove the most oppressive layers of light blocking, allowing your room to achieve normal nighttime darkness, not the absolute void she created, but not brightly lit either. A bit of moonlight filters through curtains, casting gentle shadows. You can see basic shapes and orientations without being flooded with stimulating brightness. And you sleep, not because you've achieved optimal photonic conditions or perfect light exclusion, but because your room feels like a bedroom again rather than a light control laboratory. Sometimes the best illumination is simply darkness enough to signal night without plunging you into sensory deprivation. The Victorian light wars continue around you, but you found peace in comfortable dimness. Unremarkable except for how remarkably adequate it is. Your social calendar has become an inadvertent tour of Victorian sleep culture, and this evening brings an invitation to what's described as a somnolent society gathering at the Kensington residence of Lord and Lady Ashworth. Yes, the same Ashworths who've been appearing throughout your sleep journey. Apparently they're the unofficial coordinators of London's sleep-obsessed social set. You arrive to discover not a quiet evening of rest-focused discussion, but rather an elaborate social ritual where sleep has become both science project and performance art. The drawing room has been transformed into what Lady Ashworth calls a sleep preparation salon, where guests gather not for dinner or dancing, but for communal bedtime rituals. Everyone's dressed in their finest sleeping costumes. This is apparently formal sleepwear. A contradiction in terms, if ever there was one. There are couples comparing their matching sleep garments, individuals demonstrating their pre-sleep exercises, and small groups debating the merits of various pillows with the intensity usually reserved for political discourse. We gather each Wednesday, Lady Ashworth explains, to share our sleep journeys, exchange remedies, and support each other in our quest for perfect rest. Sleep, we've discovered, need not be a solitary struggle. There is comfort and wisdom in communal preparation for slumber. She's essentially created a sleep support group for the wealthy and anxious, turning bedtime into a social event that paradoxically keeps everyone awake longer while they discuss how to sleep better. The Victorian transformation of sleep into a social activity reflects the era's tendency to ritualize and communalize every aspect of life, from tea drinking to mourning. But it also reveals something touching the universal human anxiety about rest, the comfort found in sharing struggles, and the peculiar intimacy of discussing something as personal as how one attempts to sleep. You're witnessing the birth of what might be called sleep culture, where bedtime becomes not just a biological necessity, but an identity and community. The evening begins with what Lord Ashworth terms comparative sleep journaling, where guests share entries from their sleep diaries. These aren't simple logs of hours slept, but elaborate documents recording every detail: room temperature, pillow arrangements, pre-sleep meals, dream content, morning vitality levels, and subjective sleep quality ratings on various invented scales. Some journals include sketches of sleeping positions, graphs of perceived sleep stages, and notes on which remedies were attempted each night. Historians still argue whether Victorian sleep journaling increased awareness and control over rest patterns, or simply created another source of anxiety and obsessive monitoring that actually worsened sleep quality. Mrs. Pemberton. You've lost track of which Pemberton this is. Possibly an amalgamation of all the Pembertons you've encountered shares her week's entries with evident pride. She's tried 17 different sleep remedies, from magnetic pillows to onion syrup, documenting each with scientific precision. Her conclusion is that Thursday's combination of lavender pillow, side sleeping position, and hop tea produced optimal results, though how she distinguishes this from simple good fortune is unclear. The group listens with rapt attention, offering suggestions and commiserations, treating her sleep struggles with the gravity usually reserved for matters of state. The sleep remedy exchange follows, where guests literally trade their surplus sleep aids. It's like a peculiar marketplace where people barter magnetic discs for aromatic sachets, trade electric sleep helmets for rocking bed mechanisms, and swap unused portions of soporific tonics. You watch someone exchange an elaborate light-blocking system for a collection of sleep-inducing sheet music. Both parties convinced they're getting the better deal. The Victorian sleep cure industry has generated so many products that secondary markets and trading networks naturally emerge. Here's where the social sleep rituals become genuinely touching: the shared sleep preparation ceremony. The group moves to a specially prepared chamber where everyone performs their bedtime routines simultaneously. It's oddly intimate watching people brush their hair, apply their sleep ointments, arrange their pillows, yet there's something comforting about the collective nature of it. These typically private rituals become shared experiences, normalizing the elaborate preparations that might seem embarrassing in isolation. Some guests practice what they call sympathetic sleep induction, where partners or small groups synchronize their breathing, attempting to create collective relaxation that supposedly helps everyone transition towards sleep more easily. You watch 4 people lying in adjacent beds, breathing in unison, creating a human bellows effect that's either therapeutically calming or simply very strange. They report feeling more relaxed when preparing for sleep together, though whether from any physiological synchronization or simply from the comfort of shared activity is debatable. The evening includes presentations from various sleep authorities, a magnetic therapist demonstrating new helmet designs, an aromatherapist unveiling a custom scent blend, a dietary expert describing his latest soporific meal plan. Each presentation feels like a combination of scientific lecture and sales pitch, with audience members taking notes, asking questions, and occasionally purchasing the featured products. The Somnolent Society gatherings are part support group, part trade show, and part social club for the sleeplessly anxious. Lady Ashworth introduces a new ritual, the Sleep Gratitude Circle, where each person shares something they appreciate about their rest or sleep journey. It's Victorian positive thinking applied to insomnia, and while it seems sentimental, there's something genuinely helpful about reframing sleep struggles through gratitude. People express appreciation for comfortable beds, supportive spouses, helpful remedies, and even for the community itself. The mood softens, the competitive edge around sleep optimization fades, and for a moment, everyone seems to remember that rest should bring peace rather than pressure. Here's delightfully quirky detail: some Somnolent Society chapters organize sleep pilgrimages to locations famous for their rest-inducing properties. Groups travel to seaside towns for ocean air sleeping, mountain retreats for altitude rest, or famous spas for therapeutic slumber. These trips combine health tourism with sleep experimentation, allowing wealthy Victorians to pursue better rest while also enjoying travel and social connection. The journals documenting these sleep expeditions read like adventure narratives where the quest is for the perfect night's sleep rather than treasure or glory. The children's wing of the somnolent society. Because of course there is one teaches young people about sleep hygiene through games and activities. Children learn to journal their sleep, practice relaxation techniques, and discuss their dreams in structured settings. It's either progressively educational or a way to ensure the next generation inherits their parents' sleep anxieties. Depending on your perspective, the young people seem to enjoy it, turning bedtime into a topic of legitimate daytime discussion rather than something that simply happens at day's end. Some society members form sleep partnerships, pairing up to support each other's rest goals. Partners check in daily about sleep quality, share remedies, and provide accountability for maintaining bedtime routines. It's like having a fitness buddy but for sleeping, complete with goal setting, progress tracking, and mutual encouragement. The partnerships sometimes become quite close, with sleep partners developing deep friendships built on their shared vulnerability around rest struggles. The evening concludes with what Lady Ashworth calls the collective retirement, where everyone performs a final synchronized relaxation exercise before departing for their actual beds at home. It's a strange ceremony, a group of well-dressed adults pretending to prepare for sleep they won't actually attempt for hours, in a room that isn't their bedroom, surrounded by people who aren't their families. Yet there's something touching about it, this shared acknowledgement of sleep's importance and difficulty. As you depart clutching a borrowed sleep journal template and a sample of someone's homemade chamomile tincture, you reflect on what you've witnessed. The somnolent society represents Victorian culture at its most peculiar, taking something private and making it communal, something simple and making it complex, something natural and making it social. Yet beneath the elaborate rituals and excessive remedies, you recognise something universal, the human need for connection, even around something as solitary as sleep. That night, you don't write in a sleep journal or perform any special rituals learned at the gathering, but you do think about the people you met, their genuine struggles, their hopeful experiments, their willingness to share something as vulnerable as their difficulties with rest. Perhaps the real remedy isn't any particular pillow or potion, but simply knowing you're not alone in your nocturnal struggles. The community of the sleepless continues its elaborate social rituals, but you've extracted something valuable, the permission to take sleep seriously without taking it so seriously that it becomes another source of stress. Sometimes the best sleep aid is simply the knowledge that everyone struggles sometimes, and there's no shame in seeking rest, however that journey unfolds. Do you remember the comfort of knowing others share your struggles? You wake on a crisp autumn morning, sunlight filtering gently through curtains that are neither obsessively sealed nor elaborately illuminated, just ordinary fabric doing its ordinary job. Your bed stationary, unmagnified, unelectrified cradles you in simple comfort. The room smells faintly of lavender from a single sachet, nothing more. No machines hum, no contraptions await operation, no elaborate rituals demand performance. Just you, waking naturally after a night of unremarkable, restorative sleep. Looking back on your journey through Victorian insomnia cures feels like recalling a fever dream populated by well-meaning eccentrics and their baroque solutions to the simple problem of rest. You've encountered magnetic helmets and electric crowns, rocking beds and aromatic pillows, dietary protocols and postural prescriptions, specialised garments and light-controlling systems. You've met an entire society united by their inability to simply lie down and sleep. each person convinced that the answer lay in one more device, one more remedy, one more scientific-sounding protocol. The peculiar legacy of Victorian sleep obsession reveals something profound about human nature and our relationship with rest. These weren't stupid people, they were educated, often wealthy, with access to the best information their era provided. Yet they managed to transform the most natural of human functions into an arms race of competing pseudosciences, each promising the key to perfect slumber while often making sleep more elusive through sheer complexity. What's remarkable is how many of their approaches accidentally stumbled toward truth while missing it entirely. They understood that environment matters: temperature, light, sound, scent all affect sleep quality, but they weaponized this knowledge into elaborate control systems rather than simple adjustments. They recognized that routine and ritual can ease the transition to sleep, then created routines so complex they required instruction manuals. They knew that anxiety disrupts rest, then generated entirely new anxieties about sleeping incorrectly, breathing wrong air, wearing improper garments, or using insufficient magnetic force. Historians still argue whether the Victorian sleep crisis was a genuine epidemic caused by industrialization's disruption of natural rhythms, or largely a creation of medical and commercial interests that medicalized normal variation in sleep patterns, turning occasional restlessness into pathology requiring treatment. The commercial exploitation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. Every aspect of sleep became a market opportunity, from the bed you slept in to the air you breathed, from the position you assumed to the thoughts you entertained. Entrepreneurs convinced people that natural sleep was obsolete, that modern living required modern solutions, that you couldn't simply trust your body to rest without scientific intervention and purchased products. It's a pattern that feels disturbingly familiar even from your Victorian vantage point, a template for how to transform human needs into profit centres. Yet there's something touching about the desperation underlying all these bizarre remedies. Insomnia is genuinely miserable, you know this from experience. When sleep eludes you night after night, when you lie awake watching hours pass while your body screams for rest it can't achieve, you become willing to try almost anything. The Victorian sleep seekers weren't foolish, they were suffering. They reached for outlandish solutions because conventional wisdom offered nothing better, because doing anything felt preferable to helpless exhaustion. And occasionally, buried beneath the pseudoscience and profiteering, they discovered genuine insights, the recognition that light affects circadian rhythms, even if they explained it through nonsensical theories about photonic warfare, the understanding that certain scents can promote relaxation, though not through the elaborate mechanisms they imagined, the knowledge that temperature regulation matters for sleep quality, even if their methods for achieving it were absurdly complicated. The Victorian sleep experimenters were like blind people describing an elephant. Each touched a real part of the truth, but constructed wildly inaccurate models of the whole. Your own journey has taught you something the Victorians struggled to learn: that simplicity often works better than complexity, that less can be more effective than more, that sometimes the best intervention is removing interventions rather than adding them. Your best sleep didn't come from the most elaborate remedy, but from letting go of remedies entirely, from trusting your body's ancient wisdom rather than the latest scientific fashion. But you've also learned compassion for the sleep seekers, past and present. The modern world will undoubtedly develop its own Brock sleep solutions, its own armies of entrepreneurs promising perfect rest through products and protocols. Future generations will look back at sleep tracking apps, weighted blankets, and melatonin supplements with the same bemused wonder you feel toward magnetic helmets and electric crowns. The forms change, but the underlying pattern persists: human anxiety about rest, commercial interests ready to exploit that anxiety, and the endless search for the elusive perfect night's sleep. The Victorian contribution to sleep science wasn't entirely wasted. Their obsessive experimentation, however misguided, did eventually contribute to legitimate sleep research. The careful journaling revealed patterns that real scientists could study. The attention to environmental factors laid groundwork for understanding circadian biology. Even the failures taught valuable lessons about what doesn't work, narrowing the field of possibilities. Progress often requires wandering down wrong paths before finding the right one. Perhaps most valuable was the Victorian willingness to take sleep seriously, to recognise it as worthy of attention and effort rather than something to simply endure or ignore. In that recognition, flawed as their responses were, they planted seeds that would eventually grow into genuine sleep medicine. They asked the right questions even when they arrived at wrong answers, and sometimes asking the question is the crucial first step. As you move through your morning routine simple, unadorned, free from therapeutic protocols, you carry forward the lessons of your peculiar education in Victorian sleep culture. You've learned which remedies have merit the comfort of routine, the importance of environment, the value of relaxation, the power of expectation. You've also learned what to discard: the obsessive monitoring, the equipment dependence, the anxiety about optimization, the belief that sleep requires scientific intervention to function properly. Your bedroom has returned to simplicity. A comfortable bed with ordinary pillows, curtains that provide reasonable darkness without creating a sensory deprivation chamber, a window that opens for fresh air when desired, closed when not, a simple lavender sachet because the scent is pleasant, not because it activates mysterious sleep centers. No machines, no elaborate garments, no magnetic fields or electrical currents, just a room for resting, designed for comfort rather than therapy. The Victorians you've encountered continue their sleep experiments, no doubt discovering new theories and trying novel remedies. Mrs. Ashworth is probably installing her latest magnetic innovation. Dr. Blackwood is refining his electrical protocols. The Somnolent Society gathers each week to share their ongoing struggles and solutions. They remain caught in their elaborate dance with rest, unable to simply surrender to sleep's natural rhythms. But you've stepped out of that dance. You've learned that perfect sleep is a myth, that occasional restlessness is normal, that the pursuit of optimization can itself become the problem. You've discovered that good enough is often better than perfect, that simple solutions usually outperform complex ones, and that trusting your body's wisdom beats following external protocols. This doesn't mean you'll never struggle with sleep again, that would be unrealistic. But when insomnia comes, you'll meet it with patience rather than panic, with simple remedies rather than desperate measures. You'll remember that humans have been sleeping successfully for millennia without magnetic helmets or electric crowns, that your great-great-grandparents rested perfectly well without aromatic vapor cabinets or graduated light systems. The Victorian sleep cure legacy is finally this: an object lesson in how not to approach rest. Wrapped around small kernels of useful insight, they teach through their excesses what moderation might look like, through their complexity what simplicity offers, through their anxiety what peace requires. Their elaborate solutions point, paradoxically, toward the wisdom of minimal intervention. Underscore 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 underscore. As evening approaches once more, you prepare for bed with quiet simplicity. No rituals except the ordinary ones: washing, changing into comfortable clothes, perhaps reading for a few minutes. The lavender sachet releases its gentle scent. The room settles into comfortable darkness. Your body, freed from the burden of optimization, begins its natural transition toward rest. You think, briefly, of all the Victorian sleep seekers with their magnificent contraptions and elaborate theories. You wish them well in their search, hope they eventually find the peace that comes from letting go rather than grasping tighter. Perhaps some will discover, as you have, that the answer wasn't in any of the remedies, but in releasing the desperate need for remedies entirely. Your breathing slows, deepens, falls into the ancient rhythm that signals approaching sleep. No magnets align you, no electricity guides you, no mechanical motion rocks you, just the natural descent into rest, simple and unadorned as it was designed to be, as humans have experienced it since the beginning of time. The peculiar case of Victorian insomnia cures dissolves into the gathering darkness, becoming just another story, interesting but distant. Your consciousness fades gently, not forced or coerced, but simply allowing the elaborate Victorian sleep theatre continues somewhere in the world. But here, in your simple bed, in your quiet room, you found something they kept missing in all their searching, the profound wisdom of simply letting sleep come when it's ready, meeting it with welcome rather than anxiety, with trust rather than control. Your last thought before thoughts dissolve entirely is almost amusing. The Victorians were right that sleep is important, worthy of care and attention. They were just spectacularly wrong about what that care should look like. Sometimes the best therapy is no therapy at all. The best intervention is stepping back. The perfect sleep aid is nothing more than permission to rest without performing, to sleep without achieving, to simply be. And with that, you release even this final thought, surrendering to the gentle embrace of ordinary, unremarkable, perfectly adequate sleep. The Victorian sleep laboratory fades away, its lessons learned and filed away, leaving only the timeless simplicity of rest. Sweet dreams await in the quiet darkness, requiring nothing more than your willingness to receive them.